I'm going to call the Board of Education meeting to order on March 9th, 2022 at about 7:04. We'll start with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is we need a motion to approve the agenda. A motion by Lindsay, seconded by Missy. All in favor? Aye. Okay, our third item is public comment. The first thing I'd like to say is I'd like to thank you all behind me and all around for coming tonight. It's really encouraging to see the level of interest you have in your children's education, our children's education. The board is dealing with a number of issues that have strong opinions on both sides. Public comment at our board meetings has always been conducted in a respectful manner. As in the past, I ask that you continue to show respect for the speaker and their point of view, even if you disagree. We are the examples for our children. We are examples for the community and for other communities outside of ours. Remember, it's the board's practice not to respond in order to focus on listening to your comments. So the procedure for speaking tonight is going to be the same as it's always been. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Lindsay will put up cards and let you know when you have 1 minute or 30 seconds left to speak. And please adhere to this 3-minute time because we want to make sure that everyone who wants to speak has that opportunity. I'll ask that you come to the microphone and state your name loudly and clearly, as well as your town. Again, thank you for coming tonight. Okay, so we will begin with our public comment. Whoever would like to speak first.
Hi, my name is Julia Talbot-Slagle, and I live in Durham.
Hold on a second, we can't hear. Is that mic on? Is it on? Okay.
Closer to the mic, please.
Hi, is this good? Okay. Did you hear my name? Should I say that?
No.
Okay. My name is Julia Talbot-Slagle, and I am speaking. I'm from Durham. I live in Durham. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Middlefield Durham Racial Justice Team, reading a letter that we sent to the board last week, I think. Dear members of the Board of Education, as members of not only the Middlefield Durham Racial Justice Team, but our community at large, we have become increasingly concerned about the trend of racially motivated bullying and intolerance within RSD13. In light of recent events, including the racial attack made at Strong Middle School the week of February 14th, as well as other incidents both recent and in many years past, it is our understanding that several district and school policies have been violated or ignored. These include, but are not limited to, the first 2 bullet points of the RSD13 equity policy, adopting procedures to ensure an equitable school community inclusive of diversity in race, ethnicity, language, gender, cultural values, and family belief systems. Ensuring that staff are demonstrating ethical behaviors and respect for diversity through daily actions and decision-making. Section 3C of the Safe School Climate Plan listed in the Strong School Parent-Student Handbook. Hostile environment means a situation in which bullying among students is sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the conditions of the school climate. Paragraph 2 of Policy 5146, the Student Non-Discrimination Policy, listed in the Strong School Parent-Student Handbook. It is the policy of the board that any form of discrimination or harassment on the basis of race, religion, color, national origin, alienage, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, age, disability, including pregnancy, veteran status, gender identity or expression, or any other basis prohibited by state or federal law is prohibited, whether by students, board employees, or third parties subject to the control of the board. It has become clear that racial discrimination and harassment is a systemic issue in this district. Because of this, we urge you to support and empower teachers, staff members, and administrators in our district to become resourceful and skillful in their approach to addressing racist bullying issues as they occur, whether this end be achieved through restorative practices, third-party training, outreach to neighboring, more diverse districts, or other methods the board deems effective. Whatever is done, however, must tackle the issue directly because teachers, administrators, and other staff who overlook or ignore these incidents are only making them worse. As concerned residents, the Middlefield Durham Racial Justice Team would like to know the board's plan of action to address these issues and ensure a safe school climate for all students and faculty. This problem should not be pushed down the road any further. Students in our towns have been bullied and attacked because of their race for years, and it is time our schools take action to ensure that racially motivated intolerance and bullying do not continue in RSD13. We look forward to hearing your plan to respond to these significant issues throughout the school district. We request you inform us of this plan by the board meeting on March 9th. Sincerely, the Middlefield Durham Racial Justice Team. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Chad Reddick. I'm a resident of Durham. I have a son who's at the student at Lyman School. I'm also a member of the Middlefield Durham Racial Justice Team, and I just have a couple things I want to mention. I wanted to just give a little bit of background because I know that there's been some turnover and there are a lot of new board members and new administrators in the district, and there has been a history going back at least 6 years that I can think of there have been groups that have tried to tackle this issue before. And I think that's really been great, but unfortunately none of them have really stuck. I was involved with a group about 6 years ago that involved some of the principals from Region 13. Laura Francis and Ed Bailey were involved, some of the pastors from churches in town. And we met about discussing racial issues with just issues with race, and it was really nice to involve the whole community. And unfortunately, it kind of fizzled after a year or two. I know those things happen. I'll take responsibility. I was on the committee myself, and it just didn't continue. About 4 years ago, the superintendent at the time organized a group of parents and teachers that we met once or twice, and met with a leader from CERC, and that didn't really go anywhere either after some time. And so I think those were good starts, but I think this time we really need to make sure that any change that we make is going to be long-lasting, because these things unfortunately are going to keep coming up. I think that we all know that, first of all, I want to say I applaud the Board of Ed and the administration of Region 13 for starting to make a plan now to address issues of race. And I think that it's just something that we have to make sure it's not just 1 or 2 trainings and then it's done, that we make sure it's long-term over the course of several school years. I think in that regard, I think anything that we can do to give training to teachers and strengthen school climate will be helpful, and I think there's some things in place already in the school district, and I'm just saying that I hope that we can commit to doing them in the long term. And I think that we work best when we work together as a whole community. Hopefully we can do something like that again, where we're involving not only the Board of Ed and the administration, but also our group, other community leaders, so that we can all work together. Thank you.
You squeeze the.
Oh, thank you. My name is Erin Lampron, and I'm a resident of Rockwall. My comment is regarding agenda item 12A, the update on equity-related training for learners and employees. First, I'd like to say thank you to the individuals who bravely came forward last meeting to share their very personal experience of racism in our schools. I'm so sorry they had to be brave, but I'm hopeful in the opportunity this has created for all of us to reflect and to enact change. I am the mother of 3 young children, the oldest of which has just entered Regional School District 13 this year. While our experience with the school system to date has been positive, I've become acutely aware that this has not and is not the case for others. I've been saddened, frustrated, and outright angry when hearing about recent events in which children in our schools, our friends, have been treated with such intolerance and cruelty. Children of all abilities, children of all races, ethnicities, and genders, and their families should feel safe and supported in our schools and in our community. These acts of outright cruelty are not acceptable, but equally as unacceptable is apathy and inaction. I'm pleased to see that this item has been added to the agenda this evening and look forward to hearing the board's plan to address these issues from both an educator and student body perspective. I urge you to consider making the topic of equity and inclusivity a recurring agenda item with time devoted to fully explore these deep-rooted inequities in our schools, identify actionable items, and to take action. Every child deserves to experience kindness, acceptance, and love. And as parents and educators, it is our responsibility to teach them how to embrace and respect one another. This is no easy task. It's not a quick fix, and often this is difficult and uncomfortable work. This is going to take time and a real investment in change, but the work must be done. I ask that the board invest in our children, their educational experience, and overall well-being by investing time and resources to address these issues. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening.
I'm Michelle Gohagan from Rockfall. I have a letter from my daughter that she asked me to read. I just hope that you're as half as brave as she is. Hi, my name is Drea. I go to Strong Middle School. When I was 10 years old, the superintendent, Dr. Serino, invited me to the Board of Ed to tell everyone about being an activist. I told the board how I use my activism to fight for the rights of Black and brown people. I told everyone how I raised money to buy diverse books for schools so kids could see themselves in the books they read. And how I've spoken at teacher conferences and on the radio to help adults understand that kids need to know that their schools care about them, no matter what their color of their skin, religion, abilities, culture, gender identity, or sexual orientation. Kids need to know that their schools will fight for them. When I was 10, I told you everything I was doing to fight racism, homophobia, ableism, and sexism. Now I'm 11, and I would like to know what you're going to do to fight. Racism, homophobia, ableism, and sexism should never take place in school. It makes kids feel alone and that people do not care about them. It makes you feel really alone when your friends and your teachers don't stand up to stop it. No kid should feel alone. Being an activist can be scary. You have to fight for what's right even when people don't like it. But when people ask me how to be an activist, I say, you can't be afraid of the bumps you will hit. You have to know what you're doing is right, and the bumps will make you stronger. Activists dig deep into their heart to find the spark of determination, and this spark will become your light. Please don't be afraid, and find your spark so we can fight racism, homophobia, ableism, sexism together. If we all find our light, we will shine brighter than the sun and make real change so no kid ever has to feel alone. Thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak? You go first.
Thanks, Joe. Good evening. My name is Peter Niehart. I'm from Middlefield. I put 3 kids through this region. It's been very, very good for them. I'd like to echo the young ladies and gentlemen before me. I think those points are very well taken. Can you hear me?
Just about.
I never
Come a
been
little
told I
closer.
was quiet
Raise it up,
before.
raise it up, raise up the mic. If you squeeze the
Sure.
mic.
I can,
No,
I get it. No, no,
raise it
no.
up so you don't have to, if you can. There you go.
I'm a father, I'm used to doing whatever. I'd like to, echo and appreciate the people that came before me, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the continuing of John Lyman School. We had 2 referendums. They both voted in to keep John Lyman. I understand now there's an item on the agenda tonight and if I phrase it incorrectly, I'm sorry, to enable the board or the superintendent, whoever, to go to the Board of Ed of the state or the legislature to enable the board to close John Lyman. John Lyman is a wonderful school. My kids excelled in their real lives because of that school. And I think it's somewhat disingenuous that after 2 votes to keep the school, I don't want to say this sounds negative, but the board is trying to find a way to end run the will of the people. And that's just wrong. And if we want to learn anything from the Ukraine, it's that the people's rights should be respected. And I don't think we're respecting the rights of the members who vote, the people who voted to keep the school. Thank you very much, and good luck with the racial justice.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Carroll, and I'm from Middlefield. I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak with this collective body tonight. I speak to you as a select woman in Middlefield, or on the Middlefield Board of Selectmen. Through this democratic process of not 1 but 2 referendums concerning the closing of John Lyman School, the vote results from the constituency in Middlefield that I represent were to keep the school open, and this needs to be honored. The agenda that you have on tonight, vote on resolution to close John Lyman School, is not right and not acceptable. Financing needs to be put together, and let's move forward to make a plan. Thank you.
I'm Alice Malcolm from Middlefield. I zoomed into the Board of Ed meeting right after the vote. And one of the public comments was, in essence, that she was disappointed that her children had to go to Middlefield for 3 years. Middlefield children have to go to Durham 10 years. There's no equity there. There was a legitimate legal vote. It is the duty of the Board of Ed and the selectmen and everybody else to honor a legal vote. If you don't, it's dishonorable. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. Lori Fosco from Durham. My comments address item number 10 and 12A. I'll go fast. To the victim and family of the racial incident at Strong School, we have come here publicly to voice our support for you. I am sorry our community has failed you, and I look forward to hearing tonight how RSD13 will be working to correct the situation and address the continued racism and hate that exists in our schools and broader community. This board should be reminded of its legal, constitutional, and moral obligations to protect the civil rights of its students. I would also like to address concerns regarding the process being used to attempt to close John Lyman School. As admitted, the Board of Education does not have authority to take this action. In fact, a similar vote was taken a few years ago, and our district is still attempting to correct that action. If this course of action is plausible now, shouldn't it have been plausible then? This vote will be occurring without any public notice or public hearing. I've heard time and time again that, quote, the voters of Middlefield are misinformed or didn't understand what they were voting for when they brought this issue before the voters. It is patronizing to think that. If to the extent that is true, it was the Board of Education's responsibility to inform the voters and make them understand. Either that failed, or more likely, they were completely informed and voted their minds, knowing that the lack of a local neighborhood school will impact their property values. If you were not able to convince Middlefield voters that it was a good idea to close Lyman, what is the plan to convince the state legislature that this is a good idea, short of saying that Durham votes should count more and Middlefield votes should count less? To Middlefield voters listening in or here, what is happening here is called voter nullification. The majority of voters in your town, Middlefield, voted to keep John Lyman open. The recent referendum showed the majority of Middlefield voters, again, voted to fund the repairs to the school. There was no inconsistency in their votes. This board is deciding that the voters of Middlefield should have no say and that your votes do not count. That you do not have the right to have a local neighborhood elementary school in your town, as was agreed to in the original regionalization plan from the 1960s. Every member of this board who represents Middlefield tonight should consider this when taking action. Additionally, to my fellow Durham residents and Board of Education members from Durham, our agreements with Middlefield voters should be sacred. They are our partners. The voters of Middlefield have spoken, and we owe them the same deference that we should expect from them the next time we are on the other end. Every vote should count. I do not think this plan is going to be successful, nor do I think it is going to reflect well on our district. It will likely waste precious time and money. We need to look at other options. Thank you.
Christine Gerasi, Durham. I'd like to address a few issues this evening. I wrote an email yesterday to all of you addressing previous issues I've brought up about all-inclusive play and how it relates to equity. As a member of our SEPJO, we would like to see all-inclusive play be a priority for our district. Let me preface this by saying that our support staff and teachers who help our special needs kids are nothing short of amazing. They are truly special people. As a prior Board of Ed member, I continue to bring up these issues with accessibility and issues with the playground as recently as this past fall. We as parents are getting frustrated with what is available to our children. Most of our kids cannot access most playground equipment and they are forced to play on the blacktop. They are given chalk some days. Staff do help out, but they have other priorities and their plates are full. How is it fair that for a child who has mobility issues, a child who cannot speak, a child with low muscle tone, to be just tossed to the side and say, well, here's a hula hoop, use your imagination on the blacktop? So, but none of you know what it's truly like to have a kid with severe disabilities. Furthermore, we have accessibility issues, not just to our playground, but in our schools. And yesterday, I posted an issue about the ramp issue to our pre-K room. While most people in one forum were, hey, how can I help? When this was presented in your bigger community forum, one of you, of which is an admin, some of you, where your spouses are admins, it was posted in a way to make a mockery of our children. Because members of our community continue to be ignorant and ignore facts and then take it upon themselves to bully and harass and intimidate us. But the sad part about this is that some of you allowed this to happen. How can you sit there and pretend to uphold our core ethical values and expect our learners when you yourself cannot? It starts at the top, and if you cannot see what was wrong yesterday and take action, then you need to step down. You have violated your code of ethics 4, 5, 6, and 11. You continue to use social media platforms to drive your political narratives. How can you talk about diversity and equity training when you don't think that includes disabled learners? Equity includes representation, access, and inclusion, and that's for all students.
Hi, I'm Maureen Funk. I live in Durham. I have 3 daughters at 3 of our schools. I would just like to remind everybody that while we discuss which schools should stay open and close in our district with declining enrollment, that Ms. Gohagan's daughter is still not in school because they don't feel comfortable sending her there. So I suggest that a plan to make their family comfortable to get their daughter back into a school building in a district with declining enrollment be a priority. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. My name is Caitlin Brady. I have a daughter at John Lyman, and in 2 years, my younger daughter will be going into kindergarten. I'm also the John Lyman Parent Association president, and Doug was so nice to come to our meeting yesterday. He was very informative. He, as he said, had a lot of tomatoes thrown at him, and he handled it very nicely. I came out of that meeting and I was like, I can somewhat now maybe a little bit wrap my head around possibly closing John Lyman to benefit the whole community. But then during my sleepless night, I was like, there's something that I just don't feel right not knowing where those 200 kids are gonna go. And Doug said last night that you all haven't been able to make a plan because that will cost money. But I think the feeling of comfort and knowing where my kid's gonna go to school is a lot more, would make me feel more comfortable changing my vote. So I don't know if that's something that you can look into in hiring architects or figuring out numbers. I don't know if you need an architect. I don't know how that would work, but just telling people your kid's not gonna be in a portable somewhere. There's a classroom, here it is. Isn't it pretty? Here is our plan, here's our curriculum. Maybe even, like, I don't know, change the name of Brewster so it's not such a Brewster, John Lyman, close it type thing. Like, here's our new elementary school or whatever we're gonna call it. But just not be so closed-minded, narrow-minded, hear what everyone has to say. I obviously would like John Lyman to stay open, but Doug was very helpful last night in opening my mind. So if there was some sort of way we could understand where our kids are gonna go and how they're gonna get there, I might be able to support it or back it a little bit. So thank you for your time, and I'm so sorry what's going on at Strong. It's a mess, and I'm sure I don't know the half of it of what's happening, but you have our support and let us know if there's anything I can do or the JLPA can do. All right. Thank you for your time. Caitlin Brady, Middlefield.
Hi, I'm Heidi Pezzo. I have 3 children in the district. I have written to you all before regarding something, and I still feel very strongly about it. What this nice lady said speaks a lot. We have no clue what's going on as parents in this district when it comes to hearing from our superintendent. I really encourage our board to find a way to get more information to us, whether, I don't want to read about it on the pages. I want a letter. I want something to know more about what's happening here, because there's so much misinformation. There's stuff going on, and I find out different things each day until I listen to the meetings. Okay, but we need more information from you, Doug. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Julie Carroll. I live in Rockfall. My twins are seniors and they're about to graduate, and I have to tell you something. I'm really happy that they're about to get out of public education. I'm a teacher in a district in Cromwell, teach 2nd grade, and I work hard every single day to do my best in public education. I'm here for 2 reasons. I'm a Middlefield resident. I voted no for John Lyman. My kids were probably the last class to go through John Lyman under Mrs. Brimacombe, and that was the last group of kids to really have the ID program. It was wonderful. We chose that for them, and it hasn't really been that way since, and so I really, as a Middlefield resident taxpayer, I really considered it this time voting no. I'm informed, I've been here, I've spoken before. I voted no because there's no plan for where the kids are going to go. For the teachers that I love, I don't know if any of you are here, my kids had the most amazing experience there. You don't know where the kids are going to go. That's why I voted no. I want to talk about strong. I've lived here for 15 years. Since I've lived here in a neighborhood that all of my neighbors went through John Lyman, all of my neighbors have been through this district, it is a fact that going to strong, it's toxic.
Yes.
And we all say, kids, you've got to get through it. Let's get through it. I'm an educator, and I did it to my kids. My kids never experienced the bullying. They never experienced that, and I am so sorry that that's what's happening. And I have to say, this is not okay. Our kids can't be going through 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and we're telling them, just get through it. Just get through it. I know every single one of you. I can see your faces. You said the same things to your kids. It's not okay. I don't have the answer. I'm coming on Friday afternoon to Reimagining Education. I will be there. Guess what? I do have ideas, but we need to do something. This is not okay. I'm also a Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Services board member. We can help. You know, we have an amazing community. I teach in Cromwell, which is a very different community. It's a different pool of kids. I have black, brown. I have a Ukrainian little girl in my class right now. We have so many things in our district. It's not perfect. It's not great, by all means. But hey, guys, it's time to wake up our community. Durham, Middlefield, Board of Finances, Board of Selectmen. If you want your future, I had no intention on speaking tonight. Julie Carroll, Rockfall, let's wake up, please. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Yes. I would. Hi, my name is Benjamin Carroll. I'm a Rockfall resident and a senior at Coggins. First, I'd like to touch on the closure of John Lyman. The community has made its opinion on the matter clear, and by continually ignoring that, you are actively undermining your position and duty as public officers in this community. And as far as the situation going as strong, it is not just the people that committed the act, it is perpetrated by an environment created, and the only way to help defeat that environment is to introduce comprehensive education on critical race theory in the youth. That is the only way to educate and to change our situation, because it's perpetuated by years, decades of societal pressure, and the only way to change that is to educate our youth. So I beg you to include that in your plan. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? I keep turning around because there's people all over this. Wait, do we have other people?
This is gonna take 1 minute. 1 minute.
Carol, can we let people who haven't
Yes.
spoken first come on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Michael Heiligman.
Can you
My
raise
wife-
up the mic, please?
Yep. Can you hear me now? My name's Michael Heiligman. I'm a Middlefield resident. My wife and I moved here about 9 years ago. When we were searching for a house, we looked at school districts. It was a big thing. We wanted to move to a place where we wouldn't have to move again and build a family. We chose Middlefield as that place. We actually purchased a house right down the street, walking distance to Lyman, in hopes to send our kids to Lyman. We're now at that time. My son is 4.5. We're registering him for kindergarten now, and we have a 1.5-year-old. And the fact that we voted to keep Lyman open, and I have to hear from a neighbor that this is happening tonight, is disappointing. Again, we chose this town, this community, to raise a family, stay here, and we've heard nothing but good things about Lyman, and we'd like to send our kids there. And just disappointing also that there's no plan on, if you close it, to hear that as well. And tonight, people speak. I'm not up to all the notes. We're just getting kind of into the school board things with our kids just getting into kindergarten. So I'll definitely be reading up on as much as I can what's happened in the past, but I just want to know that I disapprove of the closing of Lyman. I don't want to see it. And thank you for your time.
Hi, Bruce Eidinger from Middlefield as well, actually neighbors with Mike. Just wanted to express my disappointment in what's happening tonight as well. I think it's disingenuous and underhanded that we're having this type of a vote after 2 public hearings on the matter. And the community has spoken both times to say that they'd like to keep John Lyman open. I'd also like to also point out that I think the way that the budget for this last round has gone was potentially proposed in a way that would encourage Durham people to come out and vote against it, in that we were looking at approximately $6.5 million to bring John Lyman up to speed where it needed to be. However, if you go through that budget, you could probably see about $1 million worth of things, if we look at the class 4 items that weren't immediately necessary. But all of that was included in the referendum to be approved budgetarily. However, I think if we look back on what the proposal to bring those same kids over to Brewster would be, it was somewhere around $5.5 million, or $5 to $5.5 million. So my question is, if we've got to pay money to put these kids somewhere, why are we choosing to not pay attention to that fact right now, and just say that we're going to close the school and figure out what happens later? I think both towns need to come to the realization that it's going to cost money to put these kids somewhere. And if one town has said that they'd like to keep their school where it is, and it's somewhat equivalent to the other option, I don't see how there's a discussion or a way that we can, or that it should be worked around. And You know, I sat there tonight with my son, 5 years old, loves going to John Lyman. He started crying while poring over the budget that we had from December as I was trying to go over this stuff. And you know, he didn't really know what was happening at first, but he was asking questions and slowly realized that he looks at me and goes, "They're going to close John Lyman?" And his eyes just started welling up, and I had to explain to him that, well, tonight we're going to go to a meeting to see why people want to close John Lyman and do it outside of a public forum with voting, like we've already done twice, and what the rationale there is, and what the plan is if we are going to close it, because to just say close it and then have to deal with the same budget issues later while wiping the opportunity to keep Lyman open, wiping that off the table, I think it's disingenuous. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else that wanted to speak that has not spoken?
Yes, please.
Nope.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Tobin. I'm a Coggin-Chog senior. I'm actually going to speak in a little bit about the amazing things going on at Coggin-Chog, but I did not feel right coming here just for that. I didn't feel right sitting over there, barely getting through this meeting without crying. No one should go through that. The fact that this is happening in our district, when there are so many things going on in this world that are so much worse, that she's dealing with so much worse, I can't understand to that extent. Yes, I'm a brunette young white girl in a cow town, and I love it, but I don't experience those things. We all don't experience those things. And these meetings are wonderful, but you don't hear from the students. The school district is wonderful, but there's so many things to fix. And I feel like we never get to say them. We have to have people come here once something wrong has happened to fix them. The amount of little things that happen in our schools every day, and people are working so hard, like Mr. Warner, like Ms. Trainer, to fix them. But it's not enough. We need to fix them before they get to this point. No little girl should have to write a letter like that. I wasn't going to come up to say anything, and I wasn't expecting to be like this. But we have to think ahead so that doesn't happen anymore. I want to see the world, but I'm scared of it because of things like that. And we're all sitting there over there looking at each other because we know this has been going on for so long, but we've had nowhere to say it. We're not even experiencing things like that, but we see it. There's things in Florida that don't say gay bill. There's Ukrainian war. There's Black Lives Matter. There's so many things, and we can make it so much better in such a small space to start. And I appreciate you starting that. But I think we can get it going even more, and I believe that you guys can do that with us. And I know so many students would love to help with that. So just keep that in consideration. I'm always here to talk about what I'm experiencing, what they're experiencing, what kids like Freya's experiencing. Because we want to help. We're not just sitting here learning. We know these things from experience, not even to that extent. But we can help. We're here. These students that you're talking about, we're experiencing what you're talking about. Little kids are experiencing what you're talking about. And we can help. Involve us. We're the ones you're talking about. We're the ones that these kids are experiencing these things. I don't even know how to say it. But talk to us. We're here. We're listening to these things. We're having decisions made for us, and we appreciate it. But involve us. We don't want to sit and watch these things. I didn't feel right coming here just talking about the musical I'm in. This thing is purely for me to say, not to do with my school. But I didn't feel right just coming to say that. I needed to say something with this too. Thank you.
My name is Heather Castalia. I'm from Durham. I've had 3 kids in the system. I have 2 in the system now. My oldest son is a sophomore in college, and he graduated in 2020 from Coggins. My daughter's a senior at the high school right now, and I have a son, an 8th grader at Strong. So this is really close to me. First of all, I just want to thank those kids over there and your daughter for their really brave words. Part of that is from the fact that they were raised here by great parents. And part of that is from this district. It taught them how to be brave. And that's wonderful. But I'm dismayed so much at hearing about these incidents of racism that are happening in my son's school right now. What's happening with your daughter, it's horrifying, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry because I knew of some racist incidents months ago that my son came home to tell me about. And we spoke about racism at my house. We spoke about it in my home to my kids. And I was proud of them for standing up. And, my son said, I told that kid it wasn't okay. And I was really proud of myself. I was like, okay, I did good. But you know what? I didn't tell anybody. I never came to you. I never went to the principal and said, hey, kids are saying some really bad stuff. And I'm sorry for that. Because I was uncomfortable. Because I was afraid. These kids are so young and they are so brave. And we should all be proud of them. But to get back to what I want to say, what I wrote, I don't think I have to tell you that racism is wrong. I don't think I have to tell one person in this room that racism is wrong. I don't think I have to tell you that racist acts perpetrated on students are wrong, that racist speech is wrong. We all know this. I'm horrified that there has not been a written or spoken response from this board or the superintendent or the superintendent's office. I just cannot believe there hasn't been one response that actually addresses these incidents, condemns racism in our school system, and racism at large in our district. I haven't heard anything. I could be mistaken, and your silence and unwillingness to say or write the word racism in correspondence due to this, it could be an attempt at remaining neutral. But too often, we act like neutrality is a blessing, when actually it is still a choice. Being silent and being neutral, you may think is fair and reasonable, but staying silent when there's such definitive harm being done to the Black and brown children and families of our community is choosing the wrong side. You are choosing the wrong side. So I hope for the safety and success of our students that you will choose to condemn these racist attacks, and you'll work harder to protect and support equity, inclusion, and diversity in our schools. Thank you.
My name's Jennifer Tomer, and I live in Durham. And I wasn't going to speak tonight, but if this beautiful high school senior can, then I can. First of all, I have 4 kids in the district, 2 in John Lyman and 2 in Brewster. One of them is a 4-year-old brown little girl, and I'm terrified to send her to school when she gets past Brewster. It's not okay, absolutely not okay. She's being raised by a white family, and I have a lot to learn, a lot to learn. But we need to do better. We absolutely need to do better. It's not okay for any Black, brown child to feel the way that she does. It's not okay for Dre, and it's not okay for my 4-year-old. Also, about John Lyman, I'm a Durham resident, and I voted no to close the school. I have 2 children in that school. I am part of the JLPA. We love that school. We moved here 2 years ago for that school. I feel like after Doug came to our meeting yesterday, like Kate said, it opened my mind a little bit more that logistically, financially, it may make sense a little bit. Still not fully on board with that, but emotionally, what the voters have voted is to keep the school open, and that needs to be honored. Thank you.
Hi.
She wants to hold it.
Hi, my name is Sophia Taylor. I live in Durham, and I'm a sixth grader at Strong School. I'm in the same grade as Drea, and she hasn't been back in school since February 14th. We missed her very much, and also I've sent her an email about it. What happened to Drea really wasn't right, and it should be fixed. Also, just one thing about Lyman is that I loved Lyman when I went there, and it really should stay open.
I want to apologize that I did not address this entire group and the board about the racial issues that we have in our town. And just before I came to this meeting tonight, we did not have a Board of Selectmen meeting, which we should have had on Tuesday night. I had a very long talk with Bob Yarmentino and a very long talk with Jim Irish. And they are mortified by what's happened in our town. And we, in the next, tomorrow's the budget, in the next 3 days, plan on taking the statement that was created on June 4th, 2020, after George Floyd died. And we're looking at that statement that was put out by the previous superintendent and signed by Ed Bailey and signed by Laura Francis. And that's going to be the beginning of our new statement, and it has several action items on it. And that's been also given to the superintendent that is now sitting at the table. And Middlefield is very clear that we need to put out a statement to the entire town of Middlefield, and we're hoping that Durham will do the same. I haven't had a conversation with Laura yet. But I just want you to know that there's zero tolerance for all of this. Absolutely zero tolerance. And the racial justice team that we have that's been speaking tonight is extraordinary, and I'm part of that also. And we will just keep working at this as best we can. And please do, if you're from Middlefield, please come to our meetings. If there are things that we are not addressing, please make sure, even if you're from Durham, come and talk to us. We're open and available and very on board with everything that you guys have been talking about tonight. So thank you. And I apologize for not bringing this up before.
Thank you all very much for sharing your heartfelt thoughts. We are going to move on in our agenda to item number 4, which are our high school reporters, Nora, Logan, and Rebecca.
Hello. Something real quick. There we go. Hi. I'll be talking about the sports at Cogshog. The boys indoor track team placed 4th at the Class S States meet with 36 points. And Will Dallas, senior, won the 600 and qualified himself for state opens. Gage Ravelli scored second in pole vault, vaulting 12 feet and tying his PR. The 4x4 team consisted of Ryan Newberry, Jason Adams, Alex Meisenkothen, and Will Dallas, and came in second place and also qualified for the state opens. And after many missed attempts, the SMR team finally made nationals, hitting the exact time of 3:47 flat. This team consists of Ryan Newberry, Gage Ravelli, Alex Meisenkothen, and Will Dallas. On to the state open championship. Will Dallas got 5th in the 600, breaking the school record and qualifying himself for the New England Championship. Gage Ravelli placed 11th in pole vault, and the 4x4 team came in 16th. And the SMR team ran a 3:46.02, placing 8th in the state. And now at New England's, which was this last Saturday, Will Dallas placed 7th, breaking his own school record in the 600, and that qualified him for nationals. And now him and the SMR team look forward to nationals this Saturday.
What does SMR mean?
Oh, it's sprint medley relay, so it's a 200, two 200s, a 400, and an 800.
I'm not a track person, I don't know.
I don't run unless someone's chasing me, so.
Now on to girls indoor track. They placed 12th at the Class S States meet with 12 points. Sophomore Grace Harkins placed 11th in the 55 dash, and Elizabeth Sorensen Jr. placed 9th in shot put. Allison Vigu, sophomore, won pole vault, vaulting 11 feet and qualifying herself for the state open and nationals championships. At the state open championship, Allison Vigu came in 2nd place, vaulting 10'6". Had she tied her PR, she would have tied for first as a sophomore. She will be competing this Saturday. On to boys basketball. They had a rough season, going 3-17 this year. And Coach Salva was recognized at the last home game this year for his 31-year stint as coach of the team. He was the 2nd coach in Coggins history. Now the question is, who will be the 3rd? The pink out game, there was a pink out game victory against North Branford, 44-31 on February 9th, the night of the last meeting. And junior Jason Penny was recognized as an honorable mention for the Shoreline All-Conference Award. On to girls basketball. They had a successful season, going 12-11. They lost in the quarterfinals of the Shoreline tournament, losing 46-62 against North Branford. Junior Chloe Schaefer was named 2nd team All-Conference, and junior Katie Farr was named an honorable mention. In the first round of the Class S state tournament, the girls defeated St. Bernard and moved on to the next round, where sadly they were defeated by Thomaston girls. The swimming and diving team had a very solid season, going 6-5. They had a senior night February 24th, honoring a few of the Lyman Hall seniors, and this year there are no seniors from Coggins. They will have Shane Fitzpatrick next year. They competed on the SCC championships on March 2nd, and sadly I could not find I was not able to contact any of the people about how they did, but I heard they did well. And starting tomorrow, the co-op team will begin competing in the Class M state championships, which is a series of 4 meets over the next week. The boys hockey team went 2-18 this season and hope for a better run next year. The girls hockey team went 3-12 this season, winning a close overtime game against the Masuk co-op team on February 16th in a 3-2 game. For cheerleading, junior Malone O'Sullivan, senior McKenna Davis, and junior Shannon Moore were recognized as first team all-conference athletes. The unified sports team has been very active this past month. They had a trip to the bowling alley on February 17th, which was a very enjoyable experience, and they hosted Platt for another successful event on the 23rd. And they attended the Positive Leadership for Active Alaskan Youth on the 24th. And I'm not exactly sure what that is, but. Coggins also had 3 coaches named Shoreline Coach of the Year. Coach Ford for the boys indoor track team, Coach Salva for boys basketball, and Coach Murphy for cheerleading. Now everyone looks forward to the spring season with registration opening this past Monday. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nora O'Connell, and I'm going to be giving a general update on Coggins. So DECA will be hosting Mr. Coggins on March 18th at 7 p.m. Tickets will be sold at the door for $5. National Honor Society is holding peer tutoring at Coggins. Project Graduation is hosting a calendar fundraiser. Contact a senior if you would like to purchase a raffle ticket to win things like gift cards All proceeds will go towards hosting the after graduation event for seniors. Prom will be Saturday, May 14th at Cascade in Hampton. The robotics team is competing this weekend in Waterbury. Scholarships are currently open to seniors. Juniors will be taking the new online version of the SAT on March 30th. This Friday will be a half day, and then this coming Tuesday and Wednesday will also be half days due to parent-teacher conferences. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Hello again. Now we can talk about the great things happening at Coggeshag. I'm going to tell you about the music department. Currently, the cast, crew, and pit orchestra is rehearsing for the school musical, Emma, the pop musical. Our final performances begin on Thursday, April 7th, so please put it in your calendar. It's really exciting. We haven't done a show in so long. Students in the music department, both band and choir, are participating in an airline raffle fundraiser. So each ticket is $5. I think it's to win $1,000 something for a plane. Southwest Airlines, someone said it, thank you. And the money made is used for the Disney trip funding for each student so that they have an opportunity to decrease the price of their trip. The district band night is on April 28th. And also speaking of band, recently Oksana Leniv, the conductor and director of the Youth Symphony Orchestra of Ukraine, asked international musicians to show support for Ukrainian citizens in any way that they could. So, the Coggeshag band practiced and learned the Ukrainian national anthem in band classes last week, and this past Monday they took a video of them playing it with the Ukrainian flag hanging over them on the stage in the auditorium. The video of this performance can be seen on the Coggeshag High School or the Coggeshag Pops Facebook pages, and you can email Mr. Fisher if you would like any pictures or videos directly from him. Thank you.
By listening to the reports of the students, you really get a sense of the dynamics that go on in the school district. We have such positive things that go on, but then there are also things that need to be addressed. Just as in society, you have very good things and you have things that continue to need to be addressed and hopefully gotten rid of. So I'm glad, I'm just glad that they were here to share some of the really good things that go on in the school district. Our next two items are approval of minutes. I need a motion to approve the Board of Education work session of February 9th, 2022. I have a motion by Bob Moore, seconded by anyone? Lindsay? Okay. Any discussion? Any changes? Okay, all in favor? Aye. I should have asked if we have changes to the second one. We also have a second one, Board of Education regular meeting, also on February 9th, 2022. We have a motion to accept them, or?
So moved.
Yes. Bob, second? Rebecca? Are there any changes? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, our item number 6 is, this is Board of Education Appreciation Week. And I think I'm gonna defer this to Doug.
You.
I gotta go over.
No,
it's all right.
I think I said this after the last election, bears repeating. I've never been a member of a Board of Education, and I don't know that I would ever want to be. And, you know, all kidding aside, I think it is important that we pause periodically, and I'm glad that the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education and other state agencies do designate, I think it's the month. I think it's the month of March, to recognize and thank and appreciate members of boards of ed. You know, I really have come to believe, having been in public education most of my adult life, that serving on a board of ed is a higher calling. It's a call to public service, and there are many calls to public service, and many people in here also are part of that. But in that, they represent citizens. But you know, unlike other public service, they have a specific calling to our learners and to their families and to the community. And that's not always easy, because people don't always see eye to eye on issues, and I think, we've heard a lot of that even tonight already. But even setting that aside, it is a tremendous time commitment to be on a board of education. And not only that, these individuals, whether you agree with them or not on every issue, they come and they try to share what's on their hearts and minds, and they try to do right by what they feel should be done for the citizens, for the community, and for the learners. Now, I learned this after I got here, and if I'm wrong, you guys correct me. You guys don't get paid anything, right? Okay, so in
Gonna give
Virginia,
ourselves a raise.
in
We
Virginia,
had
board
people
members
say that to us,
got
like-
paid. They didn't get paid a lot, but there was some recognition of that time. So we're talking about pure volunteer service, and oftentimes it may feel very thankless in this calling, because when you do this, and again, I think we've had evidence of this tonight rather, you subject yourself to a lot of public criticism. And so, and again, that's true of any elected office. I think it comes with the territory. But if you read what's happening in our country right now, it's getting harder and harder to get people to step into these roles. And it's not just at meetings, it's on social media, it's in the grocery stores, and soccer games, and everywhere else. And so, again, whether you agree with what every board member here stands for specifically, I hope you will at least join me in thanking and recognizing their service to our community. And I want to thank a couple other people too, and I don't know what the plan is exactly, but Jamie Bowman is one of our teachers at the high school, and she has a class called Pastry and Cakes. Now, let me say this. I don't think she expected this many people to be at this meeting. So I don't know that we have enough for everybody, but we at least have enough for the board members. And I don't know if you want to take a short break or whatever, but I really want to thank Jamie and the learners in that Pastry and Cakes class. And I also want to thank Meg Maloney and our staff for getting some of these gifts together. You got a gift bag in front of you and some things. A small token of appreciation from Regional School District 13 for your service as board members.
Thank you. And I think I will take you up on that. I think I'd like to take about a 10-minute break. We've had quite an emotional start to our meeting for everybody here, and I think a quick 10-minute break would be helpful.
Please eat
Thank you.
something, or she's going to be very
Grab
disappointed.
something,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Our next board meeting is on March 23rd at 7 p.m. And item number 8, we have committee reports. Finance Committee.
Okay, for Finance Committee, we met on the 2nd. We discussed the purchasing policy, which we recommended going to par with the town, which is anything purchased over $5,000, you get 3 quotes, and anything you purchase or have work done for over $25,000, you get 3 bids. So we're recommending that go to the policy committee for review. Then we reviewed the budget a little bit. Pretty much it was recommended that we review and have possible staff reductions. They also recommended advertising rental use of the auditorium. And everyone pretty much agreed we need to work on retention in the high school. And that's about it.
I also have a copy of Middlefield's purchasing.
Okay, you can
I
get
haven't sent it to you because it's on my cell phone. I have to figure out how to get it into an email.
Okay.
But I'll get it to you. It almost sounds like they're relatively similar, so at least you have both towns and you can kind of come up with something in the middle. Our next item is communications. I can't believe it's only been 2 weeks since the last meeting. There have been a plethora of emails that have come through, and I'll try to chunk some of them. Received an email from Michelle Gohagan. It went to just a few of the board members with details of the incident that happened at Strong School, and I already spoke to her, but because of the possible pending legal action, I did not respond to her or share her email. I received an email from Michael Skelps, who is on the Board of Finance. He had requested a joint meeting with the Middlefield Board of Finance to discuss the budget, and I responded and forwarded his email to the superintendent and staff. An email from Michael D'Agostino regarding no response from the board about his FOIA request. I responded to his email that the superintendent had already responded and complied with his request. I received 3 separate emails, one from Doug Forbish, one from Rhonda Rigaud, and another from, no, just those 2 for now, stating their support for removal of the mask mandates, and to which I responded. And I received one from Melinda DePietro, stating her concerns about removing the mask mandates. For the most part, I forward emails to the entire board if they're not sent to the entire board, unless it's something that really is not necessarily sent to the board. So basically the entire board is very well aware of all of these emails. And the reason we kind of go over them is it's kind of a way to let all of you know in the community some of the issues that some of your community people are sending in to us. I received an email from Chuck Stengel regarding his public comments for February 23rd board meeting. That was read by Carl. Email from Tricia Foll regarding her request for aligning the grade levels at each of the elementary schools. I forwarded her email to the board and I responded. We had several emails from Danya Viola that were forwarded to me by Missy regarding her concerns about how communication and emails are handled, and I forwarded all her emails to the board and I responded. I received an email from the Director of Programs from InSpirit AI regarding an enrichment program opportunity that introduces middle and high school students to fundamental artificial intelligence concepts to build socially impactful projects such as fake news detection, COVID spread prediction, art generation, self-driving simulation. I responded and forwarded this email to Doug and to all the principals. An email from Mike Charon with questions about the CARE, the CARE club forming at the Strong School, and Doug responded to that email. Email from Cabe with video message of appreciation for the Board of Ed members for Board Appreciation Month, which I forwarded to the rest of the board. Email from Michelle Puzo, President, co-founder of UR Community Cares, detailing community service opportunities for high schoolers, which I forwarded to the high school principal. an email from Maureen Funk regarding her concerns about racial bullying, which I forwarded to the entire board as requested, and I responded to her. I had a couple of emails in support of the field house, one from Josh Ettinger and also one from Nick Fiella. Received an email from Patrick Holden, co-head of the Middlefield Durham Racial Justice Team, with an attached letter from the team, which was also read today. I forwarded the email to the board and I responded. And an email from Katie Checo regarding her concerns about continuing virtual parent conferences, which I forwarded her email to the board, and Doug responded. Today, a number of emails came in today, 3 of which were, I did not respond to these yet, and they were opposing the resolution to close Lyman. Has there anyone else received any other communications?
We got one from Christine Gerasi.
Pardon?
We had gotten one from Christine Gerasi.
Yes, I did. I didn't mention that because I haven't responded to that. I only mentioned the one about the Lyman because it's on the agenda for tonight. And I also received a phone call from Cheryl Pizzo regarding the resolution to close Lyman School.
As far as other communications, I just like to say the Paper House Productions did a super job at the musical a few weeks ago, and I don't know if anybody got a chance to go, but it was excellent, and Sophia Taylor was a star, but left.
I think she already left.
And also, if you haven't seen the video of the band doing the concert of the Ukrainian national anthem, it's really worth watching.
I was excited, and I know some other parents or board members went to read at the schools. It was really exciting to be back in school and see the school and the kids, and they were excited. They sent me home a nice letters and thanking me. It was cute.
Yeah, sorry, I'd forgotten about that. I had also read it. John Lyman, I believe, Doug read, Bob, and Lindsay. It's just so great to sit there with the kids. I'm a retired teacher. I don't want to take up the meeting, but it was just so good to sit there and be across from the kids. And I read a story to them about Russell, the sheep, who couldn't fall asleep. And it happened to be pajama day, which I didn't realize. So if I had known, I would have at least worn some, sweatpants or something. But they were just really cute. They loved little Russell, the sheep. Anyway, so any other comments?
I just have one more.
Yep.
Just in response to one of the emails that we got, and I spoke to Doug about this, and if I don't say it properly, then someone could correct me, but I just want it to be publicly known that when things happen in the schools, whether it be a bullying incident or something with the personnel or a racial incident or a fight, that the board is not made aware of those things, partially to protect the people and the children that are involved. And I just think that everyone thinks that we know everything, and we unfortunately don't. And some of the reasons for that is if it does end up going to an expulsion hearing, then it just doesn't work right. So I just kind of wanted to put that all out there, that I feel like a lot of people think we don't care, and that's actually not true. It's just that we really aren't privy to a lot of the information that people think we are. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
I'll follow up quickly on that. Yeah, I mean, we're a governance board, and we have to put faith in people, and if we do come to a spot where we have to, if it was any of your child, any of your children, you'd want them to receive that same, independent view, that we didn't have somebody telling us what we were supposed to know. And that's difficult for us because we do care. We care deeply about these things, but again, in my role sometimes as an attorney with boards, I don't want us to know for that exact reason. Like, it's not that we don't want to know either, because it's human nature. We want to know, but we need to sit here and be able to act on your behalf and on behalf of every child independently and unbiased in every single situation. And so that's why it may seem, as Missy said, that we don't care because we don't know all the details, but we do, and in our capacity, we will do everything that we can to support change in that culture, and anything else in that way that's within our purview.
The next item on our agenda is to vote on the resolution to close John Lyman Elementary School. And before we get directly to that, I just wanted to say that the results of the two recent town votes to close Lyman, and when that didn't pass, to fund repairs to Lyman, which also didn't pass, left the board in a conundrum. We were asked to keep Lyman open, yet we were not given the permission to fund repairs to that school. The board carefully examined a number of options going forward, including a legislative option. The results of any of the options the board seriously considered could leave us in the same situation, except for the legislative option. The board seriously considers the people's voice on both sides of an issue. In making our decisions, we weigh the community's voices, the needs of the students and the effect on their education, the financial impacts of the decision, the declining enrollment and its effect on the per pupil cost, as well as other considerations. No matter what decision the board makes, some in the community will not agree. We do know that we cannot let the situation remain as it is, keeping a school open but not having the authority to fund maintaining the school. We do know that there are no guarantees that a budget with funding which includes funding for the school will pass. We do know that our student population is declining and maintaining 5 school buildings is costly. We do know that something needs to be done to resolve this issue one way or the other as soon as possible. All of this has led us to tonight's vote on a resolution, which then leads to seeking legislative input to help us to resolve this issue one way or another. For the safety of our children, we need to resolve this issue and move forward. I also want to say that with this resolution, we are not overriding the vote. We are simply restating the board's position about Lyman School, and then this will then go to the legislature for determination. Doug, did you want to talk about the resolution, or should we just read it into record and have a discussion?
Well, my recommendation would be to read it. You all have had it for a week to review it. I think it was important in talking not just to Lucy, but to many of you about, this kind of difficult situation that she describes, that it not just be a resolution that says we think we should close the school or we are going to close the school, but something that actually puts into the record some of the history that got us here, some of which we've heard about already tonight. And so that's how it's been written. So yeah, I would have you read it, and then maybe if there are questions in the discussion phase before the vote, I can try to answer them the best I can.
Should we read it as a motion? Or just read the rest?
Just read it first. I just recommend you just read it first. We
Yeah.
can
Just
have a
read it,
motion
okay.
to accept it
Yeah.
later, but so people can hear it,
Yeah.
because not everybody's seen it.
Whereas the Regional School District 13 Board of Education voted to adopt a single educational approach for all learners on December 11th, 2018. And whereas the Regional School District 13 Board of Education voted on a grade configuration for the district that included closing John Lyman Elementary School on January 9th, 2019, in response to significant declining enrollment. And whereas the citizens of both Durham and Middlefield rejected changes to the Regional School District 13 Plan of Regionalization on February 11th, 2020, that would have permitted the Board of Education to close any school in the district. And whereas the Regional School District 13 Board of Education voted on May 26, 2021 to change the plan of regionalization to permit the Board of Education to specifically close John Lyman Elementary School. And whereas the citizens of Durham approved changes to the plan of regionalization on November 2nd, 2021 to permit the Board of Education to specifically close John Lyman Elementary School. And whereas the citizens of Middlefield rejected changes to the plan of regionalization on November 2nd, 2021 to permit the Board of Education to specifically close John Lyman Elementary School. And whereas the referendum to change the plan of regionalization on November 2nd, 2021 to permit the Board of Education to specifically close John Lyman Elementary School failed in spite of being approved by the majority of combined voters in Durham and Middlefield. And whereas the Regional School District 13 Board of Education voted on December 8th, 2021 to ask the citizens of Durham and Middlefield to fund $7.5 million in necessary capital improvements and replacements to end-of-life mechanisms at John Lyman Elementary School. And whereas the referendum to fund $7.5 million in necessary capital improvements and replacements to end-of-life mechanical systems at John Lyman Elementary School was overwhelmingly rejected by the combined voters of Durham and Middlefield on February 8th, 2022. Therefore, be it resolved that the Regional School District 13 Board of Education hereby authorizes the closure of John Lyman Elementary School in Middlefield at the end of the 2022 to 2023 school year. Be it further resolved that the superintendent of schools and other district officials and employees are authorized to execute agreements and other documents and to take all actions necessary and proper to close John Lyman Elementary School.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion?
Now you need a motion.
Pardon?
Now you need a motion.
Oh, okay. So let's have a motion to approve the resolution as read. Motion Bob Moore and seconded by?
Second.
Jason? Okay, discussion.
One issue is that 3 different boards have pursued this agenda going back to 2017. Whereas, you know, we had a vote one night to close it, and 300 or 400 people came out because it was kind of a shock to even a board member. We then had several committees that were created by the superintendent and others to get understanding where we're going and what was going on. That was followed by COVID, but I mean, it was followed by, in December of 18, to decide to have a single program and move away from an integrated day and a contemporary, and start to blend those 2 programs together. That was followed by a decision, a vote in December or January of 2019, I think, to close Lyman based on a variety of issues. At that time, the plan was to build 6 classrooms, eliminate 2 temporary buildings, temporary classrooms at Brewster, build 6 classrooms, or net of 4 to accommodate it. We went through a discussion of that. We went out to, we were going out to a public hearing on that, or a referendum on that, and I think it was around $2.7 or $3 million, somewhere in that range. We went to our bond council to establish that referendum on that, vote for the referendum for the improvements at Brewster. The at that time, the bond council indicated, because of a similar issue in another school district, was challenged, their authority to close the school was challenged by residents of one of the communities, that it went to court, and they were required to then change their regional plan. That required us to have a relook at our regionalization plan. We had a really community meeting led by Marilyn Dick Adams, and discussed how we got into regionalization, what happened. We looked at that that regionalization plan, and read into it that, you know, the district has the responsibility for programs and facilities. And we had closed 2 other schools in the meantime. We had closed Center School and Corn School, but they didn't involve any bond issue, so there was no question from any bond counsel at the time that this may be challenged. And the reason that the bond counsel is important, because if you issue a bond and there's a challenge, then, you know, the bondholders could be at risk for their purchase. So that's what we changed the regional plan. We then went out to have a regional plan that said we have the authority to close the school. That was rejected by both communities. We then went back for the regionalization plan for just to close Lyman. That again was rejected by Lyman, where it had to be, because it was a change in the regionalization plan, it has to be approved by both communities. So that's why that rejected that vote. Then we, as you said in the then that brought us to the referendum in November about funding. So I just wanted to put some more of the history out there. This has been going on for quite some time, and has been supported for the basic reason that the investment in 5 school buildings is bringing the cost of our tuition and cost to our student very high. We've looked at over the years the reason to, you know, get into smaller school systems, smaller buildings, and to accommodate the students with less cost in the capital aspects of that. So these have all been gone through, you know, for almost 5 years now, and that's why this is a continuing saga and a continuing controversy and a difficult issue for every one of us. I think most of us felt that investment in our students, in their education, with their teachers, and what they get in the classroom is more important than the building they sit in. So that's, I think, kind of my history of where we are today and how it got there. And this is an effort that was investigated in order to figure out how do we end this conundrum, how do we decide to keep a school open at risk, or to come up with a way to make a final decision. And Doug and the attorneys and others have looked at this, and this appears to be a way to bring this to a conclusion. It's not a good conclusion. All of us would love to keep all these schools open. I'd love to build a brand new school. And that was part of the discussion back in 2017. It was $35 million. We would have sat on the Corn School site, but that didn't, the board never felt that that could be a realistic challenge for us to do that. That would end up closing 2 more schools. But anyway, this is kind of where we are, and since I'm in the history of it, I figured I better give it, so.
Any other comments?
I think my concern is the date. And I've said this at the past meeting. I know that we had plans, you know, drawn up for Brewster. I don't feel like the pricing we have is accurate at this point. And so, while I think that ultimately it's the right thing to do, I don't think that I feel comfortable voting on something saying that it will end next year, because I don't think, as several parents have said tonight, that there is a true plan. It's not that we don't have any plan, there is a plan, it's just not a complete plan. And it's true, if we do wanna get updated numbers, that's gonna cost money. And, you know, our budget is already looking not so hot, so, and I mean, when I said this at the last meeting, somebody else said we need to stop pushing this on, and I'm not trying to push it on, I just wanna make sure that we're making the best decision for all of our kids.
Misty, I agree with you too, and I have to say, up until tonight, I was very set on, I do feel it's the right thing, the fiscally responsible thing for the town, but I do know that we all are sitting here and responsible to hear the citizens and the parents and the community, which, like you said, hearing everybody tonight, it's true, like, we hear you loud and clear that the school wants, the town wants the school to be remained open, to have a school in the town of Middlefield. So I'm not sure, and again, I think the date is too much of a finality for me. Not knowing more details, and I said this at the last meeting, just, I don't feel that there's enough of a plan for where these kids are actually really all going. I think parents are owed that, to know, okay, if this happens, this is exactly what's gonna happen and where my child is gonna go. I also voiced your concern where I feel that the numbers we had years ago, since listening to this, of what needs to be done to Brewster now if we do close John Lyman in order to accommodate the numbers, I don't believe that those are updated numbers, and I'm concerned that we're looking at a much bigger expense. So I have to say I'm not sold on the finality of it. And I feel like I said last time again, I need more of a plan to be able to vote on this.
How long would something like that take to have architects, people come out, tell us what it's gonna cost, where these kids are actually gonna be? I mean, do we have numbers on that? If we had to have them come out and do this?
Can I
Yes, go
speak
ahead.
to this? What I told the group last night, and I may have not shared it well, is that the challenge for any public body to go out and expend funds and to kind of put people on notice to do something that they technically don't have the authority to do is a very difficult thing to do, I think, in your role as a board. So I think the points that Maura's making and that Missy are making, that a lot of the parents made last night, and some of them came tonight, and shared, is really the question of timing. And that is, do you believe that if this vote takes place tonight, and just for the benefit of those that don't know this, the vote tonight doesn't close the school.
Right.
The vote tonight will close the school if the General Assembly validates that act. That is not a given that will happen. But it should happen pretty quickly if it does, because it's the short session of the General Assembly. So I think no more than a month. So certainly if you took this vote tonight, we could start immediately. What I can tell you, in my experience, is that there are districts who have closed schools at this time of year and been ready for the next fall, like the fall of 22. And that's not what we're talking about here in this resolution. We're talking about the fall of 23. And we're really talking about two different things, in my opinion. And again, I haven't been part of the planning that went into the front end of this, but I do have a background in facility planning and doing these types of things. So the first thing that would need to be done, in my opinion, and it could start almost immediately, is to review that plan from a few years ago. Not so much the architectural side of it, that will come, but what I would call the facility planning demographic side of it. How many learners do we have in each grade level? Is the grade configuration that was proposed the one that would still be with this very different board, different superintendent, different lenses, what we might come to, and we could start that work almost immediately. Staff and I have already talked about it. And you know, I'm not even gonna tell you that we're all 100% in the same place, but I think we could present to you pros and cons about different options with that. So that happens first. Then what happens second is, if that is determined, then you look at, I'm looking at Kim because she's always the one that hires the architects. Then you go to the architects. I think it's simpler to Amanda's question, if it was determined that the plan that was set a few years ago is the direction. If we listen to people, and this, again, we need to get people's input on this, because you did that 3 years ago, but again, we have different people now. Different people have kids in school that weren't there before, others have moved on, and determine if that is still the course of action. If it is, then we determine if last time it was 6 classrooms to Brewster, Now is it 10 or is it 2? You know, what does that kind of look like? And what can we do in other areas? You know, many of you have suggested, does pre-K need to stay where it is? Does every grade level need to be where it is? There are educational arguments, and there are other arguments for doing things different ways. We've had a few speakers, even in the last couple months, be critical of the number of transitions that our learners make in this district. That came out at the meeting last night too. And so we've also had people say, even if we keep all the schools open, why is Lyman K to 4? Why is Memorial 3 to 5? What is Brewster pre-K to? So we need to fix this with 5 schools, with 4 schools, whatever. But I think, so my opinion in drafting the resolution, certainly we can change the date back a year or do whatever you want. If you don't put a date out there, the sense of urgency to do all this will diminish. Plus, and this to me is the biggest issue for me, and this is, I'm just the superintendent, right? So it really isn't my issue. I'm just kind of framing it for you guys. And I'll still play this new guy card as long as I can. I'm in my 2nd year now, so I probably can't do that much longer. But what I hear as the loudest voice in this discussion is not close Lyman, keep Lyman open, do this grade configuration, do that grade configuration, $7.5 million, $4.5 million, $14 million to renovate, all the different things. Those aren't the loudest voices I've heard. The loudest voices I've heard is, why can't you guys make a decision? Why can't you decide something? It is so unsettling for people to not know anything. And I think if you don't pass this tonight, that uncertainty is just going to perpetuate. But I don't want to push you to do this. Again, you all asked me to come up with, another solution. I didn't really know this one existed. I think it's interesting whether people support it or not. But the legislature, who has done this before, they have this mechanism. And so it really, I think, to some of the speakers' points, whether you agree with them or not, kind of sets up this local control versus state, like who has the power and whose voices should matter. And these are serious issues that we wrestle with here. So I think to that point, going back to Amanda's question, we could jump into immediately, and we could have done that 6 months ago or something like that. But, given the budgets that we're facing and our dollars being limited, and again, for the people that were at JLPA last night, I may have not shared this clearly enough, but I'm trying to say it again. I do think it's a tough position to go out and pay architects or anybody else for a plan that may never happen. And I do think that's just difficult. So I think we can definitely do that first part very quickly, review the numbers. We may have to call in a consultant or something like that to do that. And even with a consultant, we still want to get people's input. And this thing has many complicated kind of avenues that it could turn. Some people do support the plan that the board adopted. Others want to see something very different. And those differences, the board would have to come to consensus on and feel like the community supported them. But I think they're worth discussing because of some of the comments that I've heard. So again, but just to reiterate, you could take the date out. I think what I suggested at the last meeting is that keeping the date in tonight does not bind the board, but it does put us on a trajectory. And you could always change that trajectory. My concern, having seen lots of things like this happen with boards over the years, is if you don't put a date on there, not only do you lose the sense of urgency, then you have to come back and debate that. And that could be another group of people that come to you and say it should be 2025. The other thing I told the group last night, and why I think we really need to think about this, if it doesn't happen, if you agree that it should close, but you don't think it should happen in 22, 23, because I think the points that you all have made are good ones. If an expansion of Brewster is necessary, and let's even say we can get the referendum passed, which is no guarantee, given what we've just seen, the construction timeline, like who knows, really, okay? Don't forget, and I know you're not, but I think it bears reminding. Let's say to do all that, it would be 1 year later. what's happening with the maintenance to Lyman for that extra year? And what are we possibly going to spend to do that? And then how are we being good stewards of the public dollar in that? So again, I think Bob kind of said it. This is a problem that does not have a perfect solution. And this one is not the perfect solution. And closing a school is never an easy thing for a group of parents, a group of learners, a community, people that live down the street, like the one. I mean, it's a very hard thing, and it is an emotional thing as well. So I think you just need to weigh all that. It's probably way more of an answer than you wanted. No one's going to ask me another question tonight. But since I was there last night and we talked for like over an hour on this, I feel like we kind of hashed some of this out. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
That's kind of thinking. You know, I'm a Middlefield representative on this board, and I have people in Middlefield that are, obviously many of them are here, that are not in favor of closing Lyman. But then there are people in Middlefield that are in favor of closing Lyman. And it was difficult for me to make the decision because you want to represent the people and you're kind of stuck in the middle. But when I made my decision the last time to vote to approve the closing of Lyman, I did it for the reasons that I mentioned in what I just said. I looked at the needs of the students, the effect on their education, especially the financial impacts of keeping the school open and closed, the effects of the declining enrollment and how that affects costs, and also the community's voices. And that's why I came to the conclusion that it would be in the best interests of the entire educational system to have one less school. Now, that said, I was on the ground floor when we were talking about grade configurations and possibly closing Lyman. And I really hear the community, the Middlefield community, when they talk about wanting a community elementary school. And by community, I don't mean a 3-5, I mean a K whatever. And I think that's a very important piece. And that's a piece that I stand by in support. And I know Doug mentioned that we did have a different configuration that we put out there, mainly because of cost, but the board made the decision that no, it would be too costly. I don't think that's our decision to make. I think, this is my feeling, if this resolution goes through, I think we immediately need to sit down and start talking about, as Doug said, the grade reconfigurations. We need to probably update our demographics for students, because it hasn't been done, I think, since 2019, just to see if we're still on track. Okay, so we have that piece. We look at the grade configurations, and I really think we need to have perhaps the original one that was set out with a K2, 3-5, etc. But we also need to look at perhaps a K5 in both communities. And then what do we have? 5, 6, 7, 8, and perhaps the preschool we can make a decision. But there's plenty of room here at the high school. There's an opportunity if pre-K is here for our high school students to be able to have a child development program, which is great. There's also an opportunity. We had a discussion with the Dolphin Days back a ways for a before school and after school program, just completely independent of the school district, run independently, but housed here at the high school, because that's where we have the room. So we're utilizing space, we're providing services for the community, even perhaps for our teachers, for their children. We're providing opportunities for our high school students as well, to be able to work with the preschool kids. But, you know, I personally would not be inclined to go forward unless I know for sure, soon as we make this decision, regardless of what the legislature says, we need to sit down almost immediately and start talking about these grade reconfigurations and seriously put that option of keeping an elementary school, both grade levels, in both communities. that's bothered me from day one for the with the considerations. And I think by saying that, I think that will help to alleviate some of the concerns that some of the people in Middlefield have for closing their school, because then they won't have their elementary school. And maybe I'm saying too much, but I'm sorry, that's how I feel.
That's exactly my notes that
That's
I
how
wrote
I
too,
feel.
that I still go back to that. I know you and I've talked extensively about that as well. But I think it's important to note that would make it 2 neighborhood schools. So it would be Lyman, the students that are from Middlefield would go to Lyman, the students who are from Durham would go to Brewster.
So can I speak to that for a minute?
Definitely.
So I went to school like that, and it is so much better now that the Middlefield and Durham kids are together earlier on. Jamie went when I went, and I went to center school. You know, that's a whole other ballgame, but I can feel the pain about closing Lyman, because center was open classroom. It's what gave birth to ID and everything else, and it was a huge risk for my parents and other people to take to do that. And it's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. But when they closed center school, like, you know, we had people saying the same thing, like my kid cried, and you know, all those things happen because you're attached to something. What I want parents to have is the programming that they're looking for. I'm not attached to a building. Like, that's what my parents got to, because we weren't attached to center school. We were attached to the programming. If we can make sure that people know
That's what I'm trying to-
that
yeah.
the programming is happening.
It's not gonna be.
But I don't want to go back to
That's
a
my point.
school where Middlefield kids go to Middlefield school for all this, and Durham kids go, because
No.
we've got enough, you know, mooing at us off the bus and whatever else that we all get. We've all been there, you know, we've got the redheaded step, whatever, we've got all that stuff, and we don't need it, and it's gotten so much better. And we used to actually play against each other in rec ball. I played boys little league. We played against Durham. Like, I don't like that. I love what's happened
Well,
since
do you
then.
have students? Do you have kids in the district?
Not anymore. They're all
Because what you're saying sounds perfect, but what happened was, and I know
a
because I
lot
have
of
older kids.
Middlefield people went.
No, we have Middlefield and Durham mix, but we have ID and contemporary.
I agree.
So
when you
the
one
division already continued.
that-
Anybody who has kids older like I do,
And I agree
it
with
was
you.
very divided.
And actually, my godchildren are seniors this year, and I saw that up close and personal.
It may be worse than when you were. than
Oh,
divided
we didn't
into
have
towns.
that when I was there, but what I'm saying is I watched it with them, and so I think that divide is really toxic as well. So what I'm looking at is, I don't want there to be those kinds of divides, I
Right.
guess is what I'm saying, whatever the divide is,
So
town
we'd
to
have to figure out
town.
we would have to
No.
figure out how to have no divide.
And you know, I agree with you there. When I talk about 2 schools, I don't say, well, this is Middlefield's and that's Durham. I mean, there's options. I mean.
So
you
you're
can-
right, Lucy, we
you
would
can
have to
draw
go
a
and look at it.
geographical line, or you can still continue with a school choice. Obviously, it has to be a limited number. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense to have just the Durham kids in Brewster, and just because you'd have a huge
So
school
we'd have to
here
figure it
and
out.
a tiny school here.
I mean, I
But
think
you
to
know, I'm
Bob's
not
point as
espousing
well,
that
it's like,
part at all.
this
Yeah.
is
The
a
good
part.
news is there's spirited debate, and we can
Right.
get on this issue
Yep.
Yes.
quickly.
And I think
Yeah.
Lizzie wanted to say something.
Yeah, and just to finish, I mean, I wanted to echo, you know, Bob to a certain extent. Part of this hangover that we have about this is that it's been going on. My mom was on the board, I think she left 8 years ago, and they voted then. And so we have this long, like, everybody's new to it. We're new to it, I'm new here, but it's been going on for a long time, so there's a lot of people that feel just kind of like, all right, can we just finish this? Like, can we just be done? But we're new to it, and so we have to do our due diligence. Like, we have to do the things Lucy's talking about. My only suggestion to you, and then Lindsay should absolutely go, we don't need to not have a date. We might say, you know, at such a date or later than, or at the earliest, this date, something like that. It still gives it the urgency. I mean, the legislature will get it, but then even though we have the room anyway, it now says it very loudly to all of us that if it's, you know, at such a date or later than, or at the earliest, that everybody gets it, that like that's a start date, and if we had to push it back, then we would, that's just my last suggestion, and now I will shut up.
And I just wanna clarify too, I'm okay with the date, I understand the urgency of it, and I'm definitely one to, as soon as a decision is made, I feel the urgency along with you too, Lucy, like, I'll be ready the next day to start plans in place. So I definitely wanna make sure that I'm fine with the date. It's just the date without a plan, a full plan.
Right, so to that point,
But hearing that
Yeah.
we're ready to just jump right into it, that makes me
if
feel a
the,
lot
if the
better.
plans don't look like they can meet that date, then the board would have the option
Perfect.
to
Yep.
extend it.
Thank you for that.
Lindsay?
Y'all answered it. Not really answered it, but
That's okay.
there's so much work that needs to be done, and there's so many things that need to be looked into, and we can't do those things without knowing or having the authority to close it. So I had asked last meeting, I said, does it bind us to close Lyman? Because if anything, I don't know how many people were here, many of you were, but if COVID taught us anything, it taught us that nothing's certain, that prices go up, that things change, that the dynamics of town can change. So I feel it's responsible of us to ask the General Assembly for the permission to close it. And I think at that point, we can explore the work we've been sitting unable to do. We know there's a lot of work to be done. We know that we don't have all the answers into where every child would go. And it's hard, it's really hard. And I want the avenue for this board to be able to do that. And in order to do that, we need the authority to do that.
Good point.
But it doesn't tie us to that. And there's still so many discussions. There's so many family discussions, community discussions, meetings to figure out input, to talk to contractors, to talk to architects. And I just want to be able to give us that chance. So that's, and I think the date's important because it does tell the legislation, even though we're not saying we would close it in '23, it's giving them the urgency to understand that we want to start the work to figure out how and when.
What she said.
I agree with Lindsay, and I mean, the big thing about it is, I'm pretty sure every one of us at this table right now would vote no to spending money to do any of this research, knowing that we don't even have the power to close that school.
Right.
So, I think this is really the next step we need to take.
Anybody else? Jamie, did you want to?
You have to take into consideration current events as well. I mean, things are getting pretty difficult, economic malaise. We presume we're an affluent community, we're not. There are huge variations in personal income situations, and you have to think of everybody. And I think the quicker we can get on this work, benefit the kids, benefit the taxpayers, everybody.
One of the things to think about is when we talk about the expenses, and, people are saying, we don't know if it would be more expensive if the school is closed to add on to the other schools, depending on the grade configurations. But if that were the case, there's still a savings that's embedded in there if we do close Lyman that would not exist if we continue to upgrade Lyman and keep all the buildings open. So there is a bit of a savings in there as well. So I just wanted to throw that out. Any other thoughts? I think when we go to the vote, I think it would be important if we all individually put our vote out there. This way it just lends a little more support to our decision. So we have a motion and a second, and I believe we're done with discussion. So all those in favor? I'll start with Jason.
Yes.
Nay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Nay, no.
Nay. Okay.
Yes.
Yes for Bob? Yes. Lindsay? Yes for me?
Yes?
Nancy? Yes.
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Maura?
I'm a yes, as long as we can go back to it after, like you guys.
Rebecca?
Yes.
What I said.
Same, what she said,
Okay, so you said yes too?
yes.
Okay, so, and then nay would be, Missy. Okay, okay, the vote passes. So our next step with this is to definitely get down to the drawing table and start talking about what are we looking at if this passes through the legislature, what are we looking at for grade configurations? We may have to spend a little bit of money, as Kim mentioned, but just keep it.
And just for clarification, do you want us to spend that money before we hear from the legislature or after?
After.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Tee it
But
up.
that doesn't mean.
Yes,
Tee it
understood.
up.
Right, understood.
Tee it up.
Yes, 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 yes.
We're still gonna sit down and discuss it.
Yes.
Okay.
One clarification.
Okay, item number 11, budget discussion.
You want me to kick
Tim,
this off too?
did you wanna start?
Yeah, let me start
okay.
if you don't mind. Okay, so, I know I've got a lot of other big issues tonight, but we are in the middle of a budget process. And there are a few things that, and I'll turn things over to Kim here in a second, that we want to kind of frame tonight that we think are important. The first is to come back on the health insurance. We've talked about that a while. We have, we think, a strong recommendation for where we'd like to go on that. Another thing is responding to some of the questions that board members have either called us, by us I mean Kim, and or put in the Google Doc, or both. She'd like to get back to you on those. And then maybe a broader one, and I know that the night is already long, but I think it is important to do this since we've now been at this multiple meetings, is to see, is there anything resembling a consensus on, you know, are we pretty much okay with the budget as presented to go forward, or are there more things that you need us to bring back in the future weeks? Because I haven't heard them, and it sounds like there's generally support for what was proposed. A few things have been thrown out, and we just want to be able to kind of give a roadmap for how we get out of this. And I think what I'd ask you to consider too is we currently have meetings scheduled for March 23rd, March 30th, and then the April 6th meeting with the public hearing. If we need all those meetings, that's fine, but I thought it might motivate you to think like maybe we don't. But if we don't start talking about some of these things, we'll just keep coming back and answering one or two board questions, and we won't get there. And I'm still new to really know, did you really want all those meetings, or were some of them like placeholders? Because in my previous district, they were kind of placeholders, and once we got to the place, we kind of stopped and then waited for the public hearing and all of those pieces. So
Don't we also have one joint with, we scheduled one joint with the town Board of Finances?
Are we doing workshops
No,
on this
we
stuff?
don't. That hasn't been, that's not out there yet. I believe they're, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You had a question, I didn't hear your question.
And I'm probably, I don't know because I haven't done it with you guys before I've come to meetings, but way back in the day, I used to do one or two workshops, so we would sort of dig through it and get information. So I was just asking, like, whether that's a thing. Like, I know Lucy and I did, but on our side of things and on the Board of Finance side, it's easier, it's quicker, it's different.
Yeah, that process is something that I'm used to and something that maybe for next year we'll explore.
Okay,
But
okay.
the process here, as I understand it, is we just have it as a agenda item, and the meetings are held more frequently.
Got it.
Until the budget gets to that point.
Okay.
Is that the right way of saying that? Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
I would like to replace maybe one of them if it's unneeded to meet with both Middlefield and Durham's Board of Finances. I think it's really important, and it's good to know where they're coming. And I know that even Board of Finance for Durham mentioned it, that they were scheduling one. So
I'd rather, I mean, as much as that's too many meetings, I don't want them to interfere with our meetings is the other thing though. Like if we're gonna do that.
But he's saying if it's not needed. I was saying
No,
if it
I'm not
wasn't
saying it's
needed.
not needed. I'm right, if there's a meeting that's not needed, like, yeah, then put that in there. It's like if we're gonna do that, I think we have to have that conversation and then do that. I just don't want it to interfere like with our process. Like you said, if we don't need one of those meetings, then that would be a great time to do that, cause it's already out there.
Because I think we have it as an item in all these meetings, but we're not really getting anywhere. Like, we're nitpicking at certain things.
Yeah,
So
I
I'd like
agree.
to be.
I agree with that 100%.
I think it's important that we come up with some sort of number or percentage, and that if we do want to reduce, and we ask Kim and Doug to see if they can make it work, or how they can make it work, or different ways.
So would we go at it that way, or would we say, I mean, from where yes, I can see that, but I guess it goes against me to cut the budget just to cut the budget by 1%, or this or that. I understand the need for it. Again, Lucy and I both chaired the Board of Finance, and I get that, but on the other hand, if there's data that supports what's being put to us, then I want to support that, I guess is what I'm saying. So there are lots of different opinions about especially the road and all of that. So you guys have been living with it for a long time, but we haven't. So if there's information that we don't have, I know, like, you didn't make it up. You know, there's information, there's like architects and engineers and all that stuff, and if we need to see that in order to be able to understand. So as Kim, we're gonna see these people in the grocery store, and I wanna be able, like, if this, I believe in this, I'm gonna sell this. I'm gonna say, no, we have to do this because this is the reason. But without that information, then I'm at a handicap. So if we could just if we can get the information, I'm not asking you to do 70 hours, you already have it. That's why you guys have formed the opinion that you've had. So I don't wanna presume one way or the other. I mean, we're getting a lot of feedback from people like, well, my brother-in-law is a contractor and he looked at that and whatever.
Wait, are you talking about the budget, or are you talking?
I'm talking about the budget.
Okay.
And so the road piece, I keep getting people
Oh.
saying to me like, well, you know, my cousin's brother's sister is like a road guy and perfect. But our folks who we trust came up with these suggestions based on data. So I wanna look at the data to see what the data says, not just, and we gotta cut a percentage because we're not gonna get the budget passed. That's the reality.
Well, I wouldn't be asking to do that. I'd be asking if it was possible and are there different avenues?
And it is always possible. I mean, they will make it work for us the best they can. But I also want to support, they came out with recommendations in the first place. We don't have to agree with them. But I'd like to know a little bit more about what underlies those so that if something really is an emergency, something really is something then I want to know that so that I can say, okay, you know what? I know other people don't believe that, but I believe that that's an emergency, you know, and so maybe we have to look somewhere else to cut.
Doug, normally in the other meetings that we've just had budget only, no other topics. And because we've blended the last two meetings with other topics, you don't really get a full discussion of the budget. So my
Gotcha.
suggestion is that we hold the March 23rd meeting with no other issues.
Just the budget.
Just the budget.
And try to get it done that
And
night.
go through the detail. You know, Kim gave some to the finance committee the other day about, you know, why these expenses are up and why these are down. We had a discussion of the options with the roads and a variety of other ways to deal with it. Because, you know, with all these folks here and this discussion, we're not gonna go anywhere tonight. Because we're not really gonna get into a discussion of the budget. And we have a lot of people here who are more interested in other subjects. So I would suggest that the March 23rd meeting be only on the budget, that we focus on the detail, go through page by page if we have to, and, you know, just bang it out. So.
And to piggyback on what Lindsay said, I personally would like to have the joint meeting with both the boards of finance. I have already sent out an email in fact, to both selectmen, to the Middlefield Board of Finance Chair, because I don't know who Durham's was, and asked that, you know, how about, and Jason, how about we get together, and I just recently got in touch with Michael Skelps from our Board of Finance in Middlefield. They're meeting tomorrow, and I said, if you know, discuss the budget. If you have any specific questions, they can be submitted by the Board of Finance, but I would like to have them come before us. And maybe we should push to see if they come on March 23rd and just to get their feedback. So we have, and I know some say that, well, the budget's already done, but it's the preliminary budget's been done. The board has to look at it, and then the public has to look at it. So it's not really a done deal just because we have a budget before us. I mean, that's the same thing that happens with the Board of Finance. The selectman puts out the budget, the Board of Finance does its tweaking, and then goes to the public, and then it gets tweaked some more. So, you know, I'll reach out again. I have some dates from if Bob wanted to come, and Laura, but I haven't heard from Durham. So maybe you can reach out to the Durham Board of Finance and see if they're willing to come, and I'll reach out back to Michael for the March 23rd meeting. You know, I was gonna suggest we could also start at 6, do 6 to 7, the workshop like we've done in the past.
Yep, we have
It's
committee
just
meetings
budget,
that day.
or just stay with our regular meeting.
I wanna go back to what Bob said though.
Yeah.
Because I think
Well,
what
they
Bob
just
was saying,
at the
we need a
regular
meeting of
meetings.
our own
Just the budget.
to
Yeah.
do the budget, and then, you know, we can get input from other people, but we haven't even had a chance. which is what I meant by workshop. It's not a workshop. We need a board meeting where we as a board just focus on the budget, and that's what our whole meeting is about. And then absolutely, we're gonna take input from other people. We have to talk.
I would prefer to see one representative from each board of finance from Durham Middlefield to invite. We had a meeting with the full board, we had a whole different room set up, it was
Yeah, I
not
remember that.
productive. It was just.
Right,
Yeah.
Jamie.
And you really don't need that, because only one or two people have to speak anyway. But, so,
We're not a department.
And I'm confused because we had a representative from each Board of Finance last week. So I'm just wondering what we're gonna hear, didn't we?
at the finance committee
Yeah.
meeting? No.
No.
No, there was
Oh,
nobody there.
That's, okay, so
There
who
was
were those,
nobody there.
how did those folks get, but they're just appointed
They're
to
just on the
that committee?
finance committee.
That's a different
Yes.
finance committee.
Different
That's like
finance,
a,
thank
it's
you.
not our
Right?
finance committee.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Some other
Now-
finance.
Now it's
yeah.
making more sense.
Now it makes more sense.
Lots of finance
It's
committees.
right.
Okay,
It's
that's
created by the
confusing too.
It's a subcommittee, it's the subcommittee of the
Okay, so back to the budget, I believe.
Yep, go ahead, Kim, health insurance.
So I'm gonna read the questions, but I have just a couple points that I wanna bring up first, and Doug had mentioned the health insurance. We did hear back from the consortium, UCHMC, who, said they would accept us, however, they will accept us at a 22% increase, just like Connecticut.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much down to our last option, which is the state plan, which is not a bad option. It's just a 3-year, time commitment, which we'd have with the consortium anyways.
An increase.
So that, they're estimating that to be an 8% increase. We won't know for sure until April, but baked into the budget is the assumption that we went with the state plan. So, that doesn't have to change the budget to increase it at all. And our savings from that is not only the reduction in the increase of the, premium, but also because it's a PPO, we won't have that health savings deductible contribution. That's really the bulk of what represents the savings in this change. The other piece I wanted to mention before I get to the questions is the budget at 4.56. So, look, if we take this budget and we just take operating, this is the school budget, this is what it's taking us to operate. In that, you've got 2% for capital, and you've got 0.5% for the field house. So off the top, if I take 4.56 and I take 2.5 off, the increase in our school spending is 2%. Not bad. But we're playing catch up. We've got to get a control on our infrastructure. So we do a 2% increase or not an increase, a savings. We don't have to do that. Budget's too high, we don't wanna do that. But look where we are today. Look where our facilities are. We talk about why haven't things been done in Lyman? We're unfunded it. Why, we had an energy project that we did so that we could get equipment at the high school. We had to use a COVID grant to get a chiller. We don't save money. That's why the Picket Lane paving is gonna be so, we didn't save anything for it. This budget is not about Picket Lane paving, and unfortunately, it has become that. This budget doesn't decide how Picket Lane is paved. It doesn't decide if we spend 1.7 million or we spend $582, which is what I'm asking for in this budget. It's to save for it. So everybody might have an opinion about what's the best way to pave Picket Lane, but I don't think we disagree that we need to do something about Picket Lane. So if I save that money, and Lucy and I met, and she had some information that we have to vet, maybe there's an alternative, okay. But if you take that money out of capital to reduce the budget, just so that we can get it passed,
Gotta stay in capital.
we're gonna have this problem again next year. And now it's gonna cost us more. So if you say, I don't wanna pave Picket Lane, or let's do it a better way, let's do it a cheaper way, okay. But then, are you still gonna fully fund the 2%? Maybe we can fund other projects in there? Or are you gonna take that out to reduce the budget, get it passed this year, and now next year, we could be at a 7?
And that's a really good point, because one of the things we've done in Middlefield, I mean, each town has a different approach, but, we get a lot of heck sometimes, but that has been a huge focus of the town management and the Board of Finance for the last 15 years, was that we have a really excellent capital plan. And when people came in and tried to mess with it, we made up for it in the following year. And of course, in school districts, what gets cut? Capital. And we didn't even used to have the ability to even have 1%, never mind 2%. So I think that is exactly, Kim, what we need to hear, which is it's not about paving or reconstructing Pickett Lane. It's about putting together a capital plan so we actually have capital money in the budget. And if that's what gets cut because people don't have the appetite for it, because at the end of the day, you know, we gotta get the budget passed, and we all know that reality. It's not politics with a capital P, it's just what can we support. But sometimes you even have to get that budget, like, pushed back. You know, sometimes it has to go down for you to go back and say, no, this is why. I mean, I don't think we should be afraid of that. We don't want it. But I think that your point is really well taken, because that's what's been getting missed in all of that. Like, the road has become the thing. And, okay, so even if we don't do that, you're only asking for 580, you got, like, in this budget. But what are we gonna do going forward about capital altogether if we don't take the opportunity to do our 2%? And that's a question for debate. It's a question for us to talk about. But it's not about the road.
And the very reason the road is mentioned specifically is I have to give it a project in order to save the money. I can't just say, we're going to this aside.
Based on the
future
resolution,
use.
right. Okay,
So,
got it.
that was to start the funding.
Got it. Thank you.
I do have a question, but I know we're not talking about budget tonight too, but since you brought it up. When the road is done by the district, is that road still going to be a private road? With the I mean, and that, again, it might be at a different time to ask that question. I'm not sure where in this discussion or decision about it in the budget.
I had asked Bob, and he filled me in on some information that I didn't know how the road, everybody asks, how did the road become the district property? I didn't know either. So I had checked with Bob, and it goes back quite a ways, how it was not, it was a dirt road, and then it was, you know, just oiled and sanded, and then it was given a thin layer of asphalt. So that goes back to why there's no base, because it was never a public road.
Right.
When the district inherited, correct me if I'm wrong, when the district purchased
the whole campus,
the property to have the schools on this campus, the road came in it.
Right.
So now it became our road. So yeah, it's public use, but it's a road that the district cares for.
And those are conversations to have. I mean, you know, we've done some of that cross-pollination in Middlefield too. I mean, but we can't count on it. Right now, it's our road. But those are, I agree with Lucy too. Like, those are conversations to have. We need to have some of those conversations.
And I want the point made that, you know, the spending increase, the budget increase, that you really are gonna look at for actual student work is 2%. That additional 2.5 is capital, and then, you know, whether it's popular or not, whether you support it or not, it is the field house. So it's 2.5% of outside of student stuff. But you need to have the road, you need to take care of your buildings. And
Just two comments. One, we do have a capital plan. The capital plan relied on, because we could only put aside 1%, it relied on debt service. We had originally planned to maintain a debt service around $1.2 million. We're under that now, but as that debt service drops off, there's more room in that debt pile without raising the budget. As long as we keep $1.2 million a year for debt. But if we decide not to do that, and then our plan was to fill in those holes with actual spending or additional debt. So we do have a capital plan that hasn't really changed. We've been sticking pretty close to it. With the 2%, it gives us a little more options on how we do the budget. And I forgot what else the other thing was.
Well, you know, we're having an extensive discussion on the budget. If we're going to do this at our next meeting, maybe we can, since it's getting kind of late and we still have other issues, maybe we can just, if you don't mind, just postpone it, wait till our, you know, our next meeting, and then we can just headlong.
Keep sending questions though, because if we don't get them done at the next one, then, and we're coming back.
Yep. Our next item is the superintendent's report. And before I have Doug's report on the superintendent, I wanted to say that because of the recent racial bullying issue, the board has asked the superintendent that at this particular meeting, that he detail the practices that are already happening in the schools now to address these and other issues dealing with prejudices and biases, as well as to outline any future additional measures that are being considered while keeping in mind that these issues originate outside of schools. The superintendent's summary also serves as an avenue to inform the community about the district's current practices and future considerations, and is a starting point for future discussion by the board. I also want to say that our portrait of a citizen, which was developed in 2019, it lists the attributes that we would like our learners to possess when they graduate. And it also includes that the learner takes the initiative to learn about and understand others. So we are addressing some of these issues with regard to race and bullying and prejudices. It's part of what's been the fabric of the school, that the learner acts with empathy and kindness, that the learner accepts responsibility for personal decisions and actions, and this is coming right from our portrait of a citizen, that the learner acts ethically and responsibly, including an understanding of and commitment to equity, that the learner recognizes and addresses their own biases, and that the learner considers the perspective of the other, including feelings, ideas, opinions, and experiences. So understanding and respect for others is already built into our school learning environment. So it's not like there's nothing that exists at this point, but so I'll let you
Can I
get
just
down
clarify
from there.
something just from what you just said though? I don't know if I heard you accurately, but the incidents that were bringing us to this discussion did occur in the school building.
Yes.
I think you said something in what you just read that
No, what I
occurred
said was
outside
that these issues do originate outside of the schools, but then they
Okay.
they are then transferred and brought into the schools.
Okay.
You know, they don't originate in the schools, they originate out, the prejudices, the discriminations originate outside of the schools.
Got it.
And then that's brought into the schools.
Okay, so, the agenda item talks about equity training, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I think, I'd be remiss and not responsible in coming to you all tonight if, we didn't kind of start with the incident that got us all here, that we've heard about, not just tonight and not just 2 weeks ago, but through a lot of the emails that Lucy referenced, and just other comments that we've received, and not just us, but our staffs at the schools, especially Strong. And that's been significant. Obviously, this is an issue that has spread to a lot of people, and not just the people that are here. My hope is that people are watching this too, and engaging if they couldn't get out here tonight. And, you know, I think it's important to acknowledge that this was a racially motivated incident, and also that it involved some of our learners at Strong. Now, we can't name them. Some people here have named some of the people involved. We can't. We have the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, and that prohibits some of what we can say here. But let me start by saying this. I think it was last spring. You know, things kind of run together for me here, but somewhere in the mid to late spring, that this board did adopt an equity policy, and that was something that the board had been working on for a while. And I think COVID slowed some of that down. And I think that was a very important step, because if you read that policy, and some quoted from it tonight, I think, which was important, you know, it set out kind of a standard for what we stand for, and kind of what's acceptable, and also what isn't. And then kind of walking alongside of that, we have discipline policies. And again, you may not read those, but you know, administrators are familiar with those, because from that is derived when the policies are violated, you know, there's disciplinary consequences. So the first thing I would share, and just Doug's opinion, you don't have to agree with me, okay? But if you read the equity policy, and if you read the discipline policy, it's pretty clear that there's no place for racism in our schools. We heard that from speaker after speaker after speaker. So I think it's important to say up front that what is written in policy does back that up. And so, as it, relates to this specific event, again, I can't share any details. That's against the law, and you heard some of the board members speak to that. But, I can assure you that we've taken this situation very, very seriously for everybody who was involved in this situation. And that is our responsibility in response to equity policy and the discipline policy. So I think that's important to say first before we talk about training. Because to Maura's point and other speakers and folks that we've heard from, I think we have two things going on here. We have kind of a long-standing challenge in our schools and in our community, and then we have a really horrific incident that's kind of brought a lot of this to the surface. And so I think we have to address the first part first. In terms of the training itself, and a lot of this predates my time here, I think it's fair to say that this district has been engaged and committed to equity training for several years. The main group that we've utilized, their expertise is, and some of your educators and you're familiar with this group, it's the State Education Resource Center. Most people call that CERC, for its acronym, SERC. And they have worked with employees over the last several years on this campus, on Strong's campus, and as well as with others in the district. And maybe even some board members and staff members that are here have been part of that, and that may have even been what one of the speakers referenced earlier. And it's not a one-off training, it continues and it's ongoing, and it continues. I think some of it is even continuing this Friday, and not because this incident happened, but because it was already scheduled. I also think it's important to say that in working with Mrs. Gonzalez and others, based on this recent incident, we're also talking to CERC about providing training to our learners at Strong. And that doesn't say that in the future we couldn't go other places with that training, but these things don't spin up overnight, and we feel like that's where we need to start first with the learners. But let me say this too. I think this is really important, and Maura kind of made my point for me, but I'm going to say it anyway. Having an equity policy, enforcing our discipline policy, and providing training, these are all very important in making our schools the physically and emotionally safe places that they should be. However, none of these things will guarantee that we won't have any future incidents. And I'm not sure if this is what you were trying to say, Lucy, but several speakers said it, so I think it's great that you all said it before I did. The school district alone cannot eradicate attitudes and behaviors that exist in segments of our community. Our community, our state, and our nation is highly polarized by this issue, to the point where the training that I've just referenced would not even be legally permitted in a number of states, including, I'm embarrassed to say, the one that I spent most of my career in. It was legal a few months ago, and now it's illegal. And that's the polarization, and that's the politics of this. And what I have serious concerns about is how to find common ground among people who hold such opposing views about equity. So, you know, in addition to everything else we're talking about, one place we might consider is by also focusing on the hopes and dreams of the individual learners that we serve. And this is something that we went out on a thought exchange for in the fall. We went to our learners, but we also went to parents and families. So many of you may have participated in that thought exchange. We simply asked you, what are your hopes and dreams for your children after they leave? And the learners, we asked, what are your hopes and dreams? Now, it shouldn't surprise any of you, hopefully, after tonight's discussion, that we had some pretty strong views about equity in that thought exchange. But it's also important, if you participated and read that, they didn't all agree with the speakers that we heard tonight. They were on both sides of that. So there are some hard feelings in this community on both sides, and it's very polarizing. But what I want to say to you is, there was consensus among everybody that did that thought exchange that they want our learners to live happy, productive, and fulfilling lives after they leave our district. Which, I mean, what else would we expect? But I think it's at least good we say that. So if we can all agree on that, maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to empower all of our learners to thrive and contribute as global citizens, you know, kind of our mission. And to the points that many people have made tonight, I think that includes respecting, honoring, and celebrating the differences that make each of us who we are as individual people. So, I mean, I'm not sure that's the plan that people were looking for, and I'm not sure in 2 weeks what you really expected to come out tonight. But I guess what I'm trying to say in summary, and I don't speak for the board, I only speak for myself, but I think you've heard it from a number of them. We are committed to this, but we don't have all the answers. So we need to continue to work with not just the people in this room, but the people who are not in this room, and we have to work towards this. And yes, we're going to continue this training, but we also need to recognize that everyone in this community does not support what I just said, and everyone in this community does not support and we have to bring those people to this understanding. And that is not an easy thing to do, because you probably know some of those people, and you may have had these conversations with them. So, you know, it's a commitment from us. It's a commitment to do this moving forward, and it's also an ask. And I love that we've had people to come forward to partner with us, and we welcome that. So I'm going to stop there and see if board members have questions or comments.
This is really hard for me. My boys are really upset about it, and rightfully so myself. Take politics, take all the crap out, take everything aside. There's not one person in this room that can't get behind the fact that this little girl is suffering, and she doesn't have a plan, and she misses her friends, and her friends miss her. And so whatever programming that happens needs to happen, but what needs to happen is we need to make sure that everybody's safe and that everybody has a plan. And I know, I'm sure it's being worked on, but I don't see a single human in this room that can't get behind that.
And I have to say too, first of all, I worked with Michelle, so I want to thank Michelle and everyone who spoke out. And I think what keeps playing in my mind is this is just one courageous child and courageous mother. There are many more who haven't taken it to this extent, and I'm so grateful she has, because now real discussion is being had. Because in the past, it wouldn't have come this far. And I have to say, with that, I need to speak up for the many kids that not only racially bullied, but bullying in general is a huge, huge problem in this district. And you know, I've brought this up many times. So I think that while we talk about racial bullying, that bullying in general, or knowing that what we expect or what is on paper sounds fabulous, but it is not the reality of what's happening in the schools, especially as the kids get older. And that is a huge thing that needs to be addressed, not just by going around stating our policies, but real action. And I think that tonight I'm hoping that through talking, that the board can come up with more concrete, like not just saying this is our policy and we declare that it's just, you know, a public declaration of we don't tolerate it. How are we not going to tolerate it? And I do believe that there's a lot of wasted time. I can speak for the older grades. A lot of wasted time in advisories. I think what was originally intended for advisories is not happening. I think that's a fabulous tool for this real discussion and these real things to be used and talked about with these kids, even on a daily basis if needed. I think that most of the time they're used as study halls, which is appalling, because based on the need, I think that that's a perfect time to have a small group of kids and really have open discussions. These kids don't know who to go to, and we even heard parents don't know who to go to when they're witnessing this, not just racial. Any kids being singled out, bullied, made fun of on a constant daily basis. there needs to be more done in the schools so these kids know who they can trust. They need to have more connections with the staff so that they aren't hesitant to go ahead and speak to someone. So that's just what I believe, that I need more concrete ideas.
Our bullying policy is very strict, and it needs to be taught to our teachers.
Right. And they need to know
I
what to
think
do.
our teachers need to know that they have the power.
Right.
There's a lot of power given to them in dealing with kids that are out of control or bullying, that they may be afraid because of lawsuits, because of whatever things they heard in other places. But they do have the power. We need to teach them how to use it carefully. If we need to have training on that, or bring in a lawyer to give them the confidence to use it, they should not tolerate seeing an event and not taking action. They need to know what their power is, not just that it's wrong.
Yep.
We've been through diversity training. I've been through the original stuff. We went on. We had this community ones, but it's just us adults. It's just, and we haven't. We've engaged a lot of the teachers, but do they know what their authority is? Do they know how to use the bullying policy? And they need to know how to deal with those situations so they don't get out of hand, so they don't have to deal with disciplines and hearings and whatever's going on.
And it needs to be the whole staff. It can't be
Yeah, it's not just teachers
a
that
select
have that
5 or
authority.
6 that get to work with CERC, or because it never comes back. It won't come back to the general. It has to be all staff. They
The
need to be empowered.
The current policy is for all staff. It's not just for teachers. So if they're in the lunchroom, or if they're in the gym, or if there needs to be an understanding. The bullying policy is very specific. It has lots of ability. It has forms to fill out. It has the things that you need to do to follow through. And I think they need to be taught what their authority is and how to use it.
But I also think it's important for us to be teaching these kids, that they need to be standing up for their friends, and they need to be standing up for.
It's hard for a middle school to rat on somebody else, and we need to tell them that it's okay.
We need to make it the norm so that it's actually frowned upon to not say something.
Yeah, I have, a grandchild that has done that and has been kicked out of his community a little bit because he raised issues with the school. And so that, you watch that happen, and if they wanna do that, they can take their authority and deal with it, but we have to protect those who are trying to stop it.
I would like to support the teachers who are really in the trenches with this.
Yeah.
We're dealing with not just the children in the class together, our learners, Obviously, there's tons of stuff going on the outside. The kids are communicating in ways we never realized, and it's all being brought into the classroom. It is just a constant onslaught. And as a public school teacher, you set the expectations. This is how we're gonna run this class, and it's a day in, day out battle to enforce it. Here we are, March. It gets tiring to continue to, this is what we do, but you have to. The mandated reporter training, which we're all required to go through at the beginning of the school year, helps and hurts because, we see something, we're supposed to report it.
Oh, yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't, or if you sort of don't get the whole picture, sometimes we don't understand what's going on, you're held liable also. It is just a bad situation all around. I don't know what the solution is, but
And that's our
I
job
would
as
wanna support the
administrators
teachers
to
to give
protect
them
you
the
from that.
power, as Bob said, just make them know what they're able to do, Sometimes we're so driven on content, we gotta get the scores up, we have all these things to deal with, and that can get put on the wayside a little bit too, so perhaps some balance, I would think would be good, but it's tiring by the time you get this time of year, day in, day out. So support the teachers is my view, as much as we can.
There's another piece. There's the community, there's the parents. And what kind of support do the parents need in order to work with their children? We had a speaker from Rockfall on the Durham Middlefield Youth and Family Service Board who offered services. There probably should be a community component to this as well in order to support what we're doing here at school to bring it out to the families and to support the families. It's really, as you all well know, it's very difficult bringing up teenagers, especially preteens, that 6th, 7th, 8th grade. You know, I taught in that grade level. It's difficult. You know, they're at a very difficult stage, and they can be quite trying to staff, to parents especially, because they're going to be a little looser with their parents than they are with teachers. So, you know, is there some type of family component that can also be included in this as well?
I think
the saving
historically, you're
grace-
gonna see that the parents that you're trying to reach in a lot of these situations, you're not going to reach. And I'd love to say that we could send a plan out to all parents and have them go over it with their children and hope that works, but I don't wanna hope it works anymore.
I think Bob's point is really well taken. I mean, I wish I spoke the way that he does. No, I really do, Bob.
I'm just older.
No, yeah, well, yeah.
Power
but-
to the teacher.
But I mean, it wraps up Jamie's point as well, which is we really need to let folks know. I just had an issue in my district today, very much like this, where, and I've only been there 2 days, I'm new, so I can't change everything. But that's really what it came down to, is they just didn't know. People are afraid. They're afraid of lawyers, they're afraid of other parents, they're afraid of Chris, they're afraid of a lot. It's a tough job. It's a really tough job, and they're tired, so we need to be sure that everybody knows what they can do, and then they're supported in that. Like, I got called out a little bit today, and again, it's day 2 in my new district, so fair enough. But it's my job to help with that as an administrator, because I need to support you, so like, you're not the one taking the hit on who called DCF. That's up to, like, we need everybody to be the administrators need to know what they're empowered to do, like, the whole team needs to know. And I'm not saying you've fallen down on the job, I'm just saying I think that's just the nature of the beast, is sort of what Bob was pointing out, is that we need to go back to that and let people know, like, yeah, we're the governance board, so we create the policy. But the policy's only as good as how we support everyone, you especially, Doug, in implementing the policy and playing the policy out. And that's why I think one of my first things when this came up was, what do we need to do? Like, what can we do for you to support you in this policy? Not just training or whatever, but what do you need? You know, like, what do you need? And we should give it to you.
Are you asking me that question now, or is it?
No,
more
I'm just saying,
rhetorical?
it's a little bit of a rhetorical question to
Okay.
answer later, but
Well,
I'm just backing Bob up,
But
because
what I
I
wanna
think what he
say,
said is
since
exactly
you
right.
opened that door just a little bit, it won't
Okay,
surprise
no, I'm
anybody who's
there.
been around me, like, and I think Maura kind of touched on it. And it's not just the speakers tonight, but I'll reference them because they're the most recent in our brains, but they came a couple weeks ago and we've heard from a lot of these people. What I heard was that we need to do something, and that this needs to get better, and that we need to fix it, and people are willing to work with us. And I think we even heard a few prospective solutions, some of which we addressed: more training for staff, learners, things like that. Okay. Let me tell you what I didn't hear. And again, no one will be surprised that I'm saying this. Could we hypothesize that a lot of the root causes of what we're doing is the system that we operate and the way that we operate it? And unless we are willing to rethink that system in a whole-scale and fundamental way, all the training in the world and all the outreach and all of that, it might make us feel better. It's not going to change what those young people are telling us. And I think it would be a crime if 5 years, 10 years from now, different people are sitting in these seats and those seats, and it's the same conversation. And I happen to believe it will be if we don't take the systems change, because, and again, this is not just me banging the drum for the reimagining and all that, but everything you said in that, what we presented to you guys as a draft strategic plan, when it talked about learning coaches and connection teams and every child feeling a sense of belonging and being known for who they are, that is very difficult to achieve in the current system. But systems change is hard. I mean, we just talked about that with closing a school. Anything that's very different than what we've done, different grade levels, any of that, people are gonna push back because it's not what's normal for them. But I'm only mentioning that because I think sometimes that gets lost for those of us that champion a systems change. That it's maybe just seen to Jamie's point, as maybe the educational benefits of like more kids are gonna get into college and whatever. But remember, we talked about those 4 domains, not just the academic, but the wellness and the citizenship and the employability, all tied to the hopes and dreams. And like, to me, there is a natural connection point here to what people have said here. So I think there's an opportunity. I think the challenge is going to be, that work cannot happen overnight. It's not gonna take years either. And we're already starting to form teams and do all this. So it's almost, in my mind, like a 2-track thing. We need to ramp up this training and engage with these groups and do more to support this work in the current system. But I'm just, kind of my ask, you asked.
I did.
Try to keep supporting this future vision, because in the work that I've been part of in other places and that I've seen, it's not like you can completely eliminate this stuff, but it doesn't happen nearly as often. And the learners of all races, of all sexual orientations, of all religions, all the different things our policy talks to, they feel a sense of belonging and connection that they're probably not feeling now. I shouldn't say that all of them aren't feeling now. Some of our learners do feel that way, maybe many of them, but many of them do not. And I think we've heard that over and over. So thank you for opening that door. I'll be quiet now.
Just in my last job, which I retired 11 years ago, but we had a huge racial issue in the Hartford Metropolitan District with the Water and Sewer Authority. It was rampant, and we addressed it by having all 400 people go to almost a week, 5 days of training in diversity. Did that solve the problem? No. What solved the problem is I fired a bunch of people. And that made a change, because people realized that we were serious. And that is not easy, but it changed a lot of people who were then more cognizant of their responsibility as managers or leaders to prohibit this stuff. That shouldn't have to happen in a school. It shouldn't have to happen here. I mean, the teachers are not people who are putting pipes in the ground. You know, it's a different culture, but it does take some enforcement sometimes. The other thing we heard tonight is that the students want to help. We have a bunch of students on our well-being committee. I'd like to have a meeting next week with our well-being committee and get some of those students engaged in this discussion and figure out how they can help. They've asked to do it. 3 of them are on the committee, or 2 of them are on the committee, and they would probably have a lot to offer in a different, smaller group able to talk about these issues and what they feel is important in their role in the school, and bringing seniors and juniors into the middle school and having them lecture rather than a teacher may be of more value. See what they offer and see what they can do.
I still go back to though, I think that's all really important, but I think real training is the key right now. I love the idea. I think reimagining education will open up the doors to just a different structure, more connection, like you said, so maybe a lot of those behaviors we won't see. But to me, it's so far down the road that what we have to address, like you said, right now is right now.
Yep.
So to me, that
It's
it's definitely
both in my
training
mind,
and putting more power in the teacher's hands, and then giving them skills to be able to pass the information on to the students.
I'd like to see if we think it's feasible to put a few of the strong students on well-being.
You can invite anybody you want. It's not a really structured committee, as you can see.
Okay.
We can get Sophia, I'm sure.
Just because we're having a discussion now, it doesn't mean that this is over. This is a starting point. And I'm sure that it will continue in different ways, and perhaps even discussion on the board, or some things will be happening outside of the board. So, just so that we know, this is just a starting point. Okay, we'll move on to our next, did you have something else?
Yeah, the only other thing I'd like to see is, the possibility of collaborating with the towns to make a statement that we don't find this acceptable in our schools or in our community.
We can talk about how and what that means. Okay. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Actually, I did, but I'll try to be brief. Not about that, but in the 12B. The first one, and this will just tell you how things change so quickly. It's amazing to me that COVID has actually taken a back seat to so many other topics tonight. And I'm not happy for what some of those other topics are, but I am happy that COVID is taking a back seat. And so I want to let everyone know that we started mask optional on February 28th, which was just a week ago, Monday, and I think it's fair to say it seems to be working, and it's working for those that mask, and it's working for those that don't mask, and there seems to be a little bit more joy and energy in the schools as a result of that. Having said all that, I want to remind everyone we've decided we're going to wait still a few more weeks with those other mitigation strategies. We don't want to act like this thing is behind us and that we don't have any concerns. Continue to watch the numbers, listen to what the health department is telling us, what's happening in the community across the state. To me, and Missy already brought this up, but I think it bears repeating, it was the third day of mask optional that we had Read Across America Day in our schools. I want to thank staff members, board members, and also the teachers and the staff at the schools that invited us and handed us the books to read and made that all so easy. That was, I don't know, and again, some of the kids had masks on, but those that didn't, and even those that did, it was joyful, and also that we even felt comfortable bringing a handful of visitors in to do that. And I'm hoping that, we talked about this last night at the Lyman meeting too, that maybe a few more weeks of this, and then maybe we get comfortable doing even more things, because, and this was in one of the emails you referenced, I think one of the reasons why some parents are not, I don't want to say happy, but are concerned that the conferences are still going to be virtual primarily next week is not so much about the conferences, it's because they want to get in the schools. And if their children are very young, or if their children just started in a school, they really haven't been in and seen anything. And this is a big deal. And so I'm not saying we're going to do anything reckless, but we are working towards a responsible way of reintegrating visitors, not just parents, but that's the primary group that I think are asking to get in there. And I guess I just want to give hope to people to say, we read to people last Wednesday, and it worked. And a lot of us got nice follow-up letters from some of the learners that we read to, and that was really, maybe their teacher made them probably, but still heartfelt in all of that. The last thing I'm going to mention, and again, this is not for a prolonged discussion, but I think this is pretty cool. As I've met with all board members, but more recently some of the newer board members, we've had this conversation about how do we reach people in our community who are not parents, who are not employees, who don't get into the Parent Square thing. And we've talked about many different ways that we could do that, town times and all of these things. But some of these things woefully fall short, newsletters and all of these things. Well, we think we have another tool that we can launch in this. And we can't roll it out tonight, but we're working on it. And I know we talked about we have to work about a whole lot of other things tonight too. But this one, we've got a capability within Parent Square to form what we're going to call a quote-unquote community group. We have like Parents of Lyman group, or 8th grade learners strong, or whatever, different ways that we can push things out. And so we talked about it as a staff, and initially we just want this to be at the district level, but and it would be an opt-in, so we're not going to force things on people who don't want it, but we know that some people want this information. Maybe it's more about budgets and some of these things, but it also gives us an opportunity to share some of the good things that are happening in schools. We've also had some folks come to us and say, why aren't we doing newsletters or these other things? I think maybe a couple, 3 times a year, if we have this tool, a digital newsletter that we could get out there, that we're not spending an arm and a leg on printing or on paper that we can't even get, for things that a lot of times people just throw in the trash. I think we could do those things, and it really wouldn't burden the schools because they're sending that stuff out every week anyway. It would just be compiling some of that stuff, but also allowing. So again, we're very excited about this possibility. So if you could kind of spread that word in your own circles, and hopefully, in the next few weeks, we can actually put that out there. And, if only 2 people sign up, okay, then my enthusiasm will be curbed a little bit. But I have to believe there's more than a couple people. I know Carl will subscribe, right? Okay, we got one. We got one. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, item number 13, Director Finance Report. Did you want to add something, Kim?
Just that the February financials are in your packet, and just give me a call or an email if you have any questions. It's late, so that's all. Thank you.
Okay. We're down to item number 14, which is public comment again. And this is referring to items on the agenda or any other topic and also if you're not inclined to speak tonight, or someone is listening, feel free to send an email. My email address is on the website, as well as all the board members, and share your opinions. Okay.
Michelle Cohagen from Falls, Connecticut. Equity is defined as meeting the needs of all learners. Equity can't be reached unless you actually name what's hurting children. Racism, bullying, sexism, homophobia. Let's name it. Let's not keep calling it equity. It's hate. And to call it polarizing is just telling me you're afraid to stand up. What is the opposite of protecting children? Harming them. What is the opposite of wanting to not have racism in your school? Racism. So that's the polarizing thing. You're telling me you want to give as much air to racists as you want to give to my child. My child has received countless emails from her classmates of support over the past almost 3 weeks. This board and the superintendent have said nothing. Nothing. 11-year-olds are braver than some of you. This is not okay. This is the message you sent to children today. No, you can't control every single parent, but you can control your policy. You can control your discipline practices. You can control it in a way that says hate does not belong here. A year ago, I met with the superintendent with a group of parents that had children of mixed race and children of color. We asked what changes were going to be made, and we were told about reimagining education. Student-centered learning can still be harmful and racist without training and protecting children. We then asked about making again the reminder to families that hate symbols and speech do not belong in our community. And we were told if we make such statements, it will put these kids and bury them and make them go underground. Guess what? I don't care. It will protect my kid. And I said I did not care if a child goes underground because they're racist. Because at least my child won't be harmed. And here we are a year later. Do something. I'm so profoundly disappointed that this was your plan for tonight. My child hasn't been in school since February 14th. What have you done? She works every single day by herself, educating herself. Since February 14th, and this is what you came up with.
Hi, I'm Heidi Johnson. I'm from Durham. I have 12 and 14-year-olds, and I hesitate to speak after Michelle because I wouldn't want to diminish the impact of anything that she said. I think the message that was received from leadership tonight is that the people in town who oppose EDI are somehow to be considered in this process, and I can tell you that our kids engage with their kids every day. I engage with them, and you all engage with them on the internet, on socials, on the street, all the time. So whether or not we, offend anybody here by effectuating the policies that already exist, the problem exists. And in terms of liability, I think we already should be concerned as a board and as a district about liability, because there is a history of claims here. So I would have expected a stronger statement from you all, from the superintendent as to this issue. And Mrs. Buckheit had to leave, but I just want to echo that kids say racial slurs in my children's classrooms all the time, every day. And this has been reported. It is no longer shocking. They no longer tell me. So we have discussed this at home. But this goes on every day, in addition to all of the other varieties of bullying. And then accusations of bullying used by kids whose bullying is not being addressed. So that it goes to that degree of a problem where now kids whose bullying is unaddressed accuse other kids of bullying them, where there will be some attention paid. Okay, so it gets more and more complex. But I think that we as a community and as a district need a stronger condemnation of the things that are being allowed to go on. And I don't care if people are uncomfortable. The policies need to be enforced all the time. And I'm not talking about scapegoating kids, but it can't be tolerated. It cannot. I don't know how gently we tell people that this kind of language can't be used in the middle school. We can't be mutilating anything, referring to people's names. Scary, terrifying acts that suggest a propensity for violence. Not tolerated. And I don't care if people don't like it. So I think if people are worried about liability, we need to be worried more about the liability of doing not enough. Because the Office of Civil Rights will come in here. I mean, there are all manner of agencies that will come in here and will, assess fines, do whatever else they do. I mean, do what they do in Hartford, which is set up consent decrees and make it so that our community doesn't even govern this school or this district. Those things happen. And I mean, the sort of incident that went on here, for anyone who doesn't know, is the sort of thing that would be picked up by national news. It is disgusting, and it needs to be unequivocally denounced, period. Period.
Jennifer Tomer from Durham. On her point and the liability of hurting people's feelings or not knowing what to say, and being an ally in any of this, not saying anything is the wrong thing. And speaking up, even if you're not sure if it's the right thing, is a step in the right direction, period.
Hi, I'm James Towers-Slagle. I live here in Durham. I wanted to give you the chance. I didn't say anything before the meeting. I wanted to hear what you had to say. And I'm so disappointed. You blew it. You didn't do anything. No condemnation of racism, which is basic. No telling teachers, hey, if you hear a kid say something in the front row of the math class, and you go to the principal and you say, I heard a kid say something in the front row of the math class, that you have that teacher's back unwaveringly, absolutely. You didn't do it. You blew it. I don't know what to say. You want to talk about liability? What are you waiting for to happen? Somebody come in here and shoot somebody? Because then you got liability. Because then you've created a racist environment. You've created a dangerous place for your learners, for your teachers, and you aren't fixing it. You talk about 5 or 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years from now, sitting here and talking about these same things, and you hope it didn't happen. We did that 5 or 6 years ago. This has happened over and over. You need to do something now, today, yesterday. This doesn't need to happen. I don't care what happens in Tennessee or Texas or Florida. I live in Connecticut. I live in the 3rd decade of the 21st century. I live in a post-George Floyd, a post-Ahmaud Arbery world, and I expect you to do something to protect my kids and other kids. And you're not doing it. You are failing. And you should be ashamed. I know you don't get paid, but you ran for the office, you were elected, you got the job, congratulations. Fix the problems or at least do something, because you're not doing it now.
Hello, Mariah Roy Durham. In this community, we fall victim to the Babel effect every day. The Babel effect is a tendency for people who talk a lot to emerge as leaders, even if the information has low quality. The loud voices in this community who perceive themselves as leaders and insist on always getting the last word in use intimidation tactics, primarily on social media, to keep individuals from coming forward with their concerns. I took the photograph of the email those of you on the board received from Christine Gerasi about the pre-K ramp today, or yesterday. There was no ill will behind the sharing of that photo, simply to inform community members of the inaccessibility of the pre-K entrance for students with disabilities that cannot access the stairs due to the very large puddle. Many community members on one forum were quick to jump in asking how they could help and offer support. However, the loud voices in the community, up to their usual antics, turned the valid concern about lack of access to the ramp into a complete mockery. One community member even referred to it as the Great Puddle War of 22 on a forum where one of the BOE Board of Ed members, sitting here now, is an admin. The comments went on to ask why something wasn't mentioned sooner because it's been an ongoing issue. I'll tell you why. Because people are fearful of speaking up on public platforms because they're immediately attacked, questioned, and mocked by the voices we can all identify as condescending and intimidating repeatedly on social media platforms. Members of the SEPJO, myself included, took the time to investigate the situation, speak with parents who were affected, and then decided it would be best to bring the situation forth in a public forum. We took the time to get to know that the drainage issue has been ongoing, and there's a huge puddle that develops with any precipitation that restricts access to the ramp at the pre-K entrance. We confirmed that the ramp wasn't always cleared in inclement weather, snow, sleet, and ice, but the stairs were always cleared. Community members also commented on the post about the ramp that there are other entrances the student in question could take, making it seemingly not a big deal. But these students deserve the least restrictive environment. Why can't we repair the ramp so the students in question can access the pre-K building with their peers without having to get carried in and out, up and down the stairs every day by their parents? Students with mobility issues don't always have cognitive issues. They want to socialize, they want to do things and access things that their peers can. The fact that we have an inaccessible ramp robs them of that right. Moreover, if there was an emergency that blocked off the other entrances some people in the community insisted could be used, how would these students in question safely evacuate the building? Would they be carried by staff? What if that wasn't possible? What if the ramp was the only way out? We also heard a great deal about the inaccessibility of the playground for learners with mobility issues. One small example being that walkers don't coincide with wood chip playground flooring. Accessibility is a foundational component of equity, diversity, and inclusion. How do we fix this? The racism issue in the district is extremely discouraging. I don't even know where to begin. The student who is at the heart of this issue hasn't been in school since February 14th, and there seems to be no sense of urgency for how we're going to fix this. We should be banding together to make sure the student feels safe, welcome, protected, and supported. Instead, she's missing out on her education that she's entitled to. Don't pretend like you can even fathom for 1 second what she's going through, because none of us can. By speaking up, she is paving the way for change, and change is hard and it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. I do have grave concerns that the board's sudden desire to make a statement in reference to how they don't condone racial bullying only comes after this meeting tonight. Lastly, I want the community members to know that they may be afraid, that if you're afraid to speak out for concerns or issues you're facing, for fear of retaliation, intimidation, tactics, or otherwise, that we see repeatedly from certain community members, I am happy to listen and advocate for you. I had the opportunity to participate in the 7-week Education Reimagined Learning Lab program paid for by the district, where I made connections with educators and administrators, both nationally and internationally. I no longer want to sit by and let the things I learned about making a district equitable, inclusive, and diverse while meeting all learners' needs fall to the wayside. Again, my name is Mariah Roy, and I'm here and willing to speak for anyone who fears bringing their concerns forward.
I'm very tall. Okay, I have a lot to say, so I'll be quick. My name is Patrick Holden. I'm from Durham, and my phone's on 1%, so let's go quickly. In regard to the whole thing with this being a thing that we're gonna, like, 5, 6 years, 10 years, something like that, that was me 10 years ago when I started my freshman year here, and nothing has changed, and that is extremely discouraging. I spoke about that in depth last time. Other people have already said this, there needs to be a plan of how teachers respond to these incidents immediately. We can have as many policies as we want, but unless they are enforced, nothing's gonna happen. Teachers and staff need to know that what they can do and that they're supported in doing what they can do. Let's see, what else? In response to the idea that these things originate outside of school, yes, they do, they can. But when they happen in the school, it's the school's responsibility. There's so many examples that I can think of things either happening in the school when I was in the school, or even if they came from outside the school, they were then nurtured more in the school environment. And that's what needs to change, the idea of the system needing to change. And let's see, real action. Yes, we need that. As I said, different policies can be great, but unless they're enforced, unless teachers have the support for that, my phone just died. And yeah, similarly, I had really no plan to speak tonight unless I felt I needed to. I was looking forward to hearing what plans were brought up, and obviously, I'm sure there is stuff going on behind the scenes that you can't talk about. I understand that. However, when we get silence completely blankly, that is extremely discouraging. And there are several people here that I know want to make change and are behind all of this. And I just want to hear that more from everybody as well. And I need to see that as well. Because, again, this happened for me a decade ago. Happened to my friend, someone I consider my brother, who was extremely traumatized from his experiences in the school, and they continue to affect him to this day. And I would hate for something like that to happen to someone else when it already seems to be doing that. So please do something, because this is not over, and as someone said, it should have happened yesterday. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is John Swift, and like a couple of the other previous speakers recently, I'm a member of the Middlefield-Durham Racial Justice Team. There are so many things that have been said tonight that I'm having a really hard time choosing what to mention, and it's very late, and the last thing you want to hear is another comment probably, but I just want to address the issue about the community being divided and polarized. Our whole nation is polarized. That doesn't mean that some things are right and some things are wrong. And I think I can also sympathize with the point that's been made that for all of you, your job is hard and you're not getting paid for it. But there's a responsibility here. This is sort of a gut check, I think, in terms of right and wrong. And policies are one thing, but I think Mr. Moore has made and Mrs. Caramanello also, that if policies aren't enforced by teachers who feel empowered to act on the spot when they see or hear about racist behavior or any kind of bullying in the schools, then there's a disconnect that it's not getting down to the level where it has to happen. Okay, that's enough. You've heard enough comments. I just wanted to add another voice from the Racial Justice Team. Thank you.
Hello. My name is Julia Talbert-Sligo, resident of Durham, and I just want to make clear that I was previously speaking on behalf of the Racial Justice Team. I am not anymore. But I would like to say that, the most basic thing that a school does is you go to school to learn. I go to school because I'm interested in learning. And it's not just about learning about the solar systems or World War II. You're learning how to interact with people around you. So it is a failure on the school's part, a legitimate failure, if kids do not know how to interact with people around them, especially people who are different from them. That it should be something taught by the schools. It should be something enforced by the schools. And if kids aren't doing that, then it's a failure on the part of the schools. And it's really disappointing to me because I go to these schools and I want to know that the school that I'm going to is doing its best to teach me everything that I need to be a functional adult in society. And functional adults are not people who say racial slurs or homophobic slurs, anything like that. That is not an aspect of a functional adult. Another thing I would like to say is that, you know, support of the community was mentioned. But I think that it's been made clear that the board doesn't really care much about the support of the community. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Doesn't really care much about the support of the community because there was a vote passed tonight that was clearly not supported by the majority of the community. So, you know, I'm a learner and I want to learn and I want the people around me to learn, and I'm disappointed and saddened by the way that I'm learning. It's not cool, and the learners around me, it's not working, and something really needs to be fixed because this is not the most basic thing a school is supposed to do is not happening. Thank you.
Bruce Eidinger again from Middlefield, and I don't mean to detract from previous comments, but I would like to request that the board share the contact information with the for the legislative body that you'll be contacting to get permission to override the vote. If that could be publicly shared, either on the website or through a notice, so everybody else has a chance to reach out to the same body, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Do you want me to?
You can, but it's probably good to put it in writing too, in case you have a chance to read.
Well, we're not supposed to respond, but I want to give you the answer just so you can take it away. We can still put it out there. It is the General Assembly at large, so it is basically every member of the House and the Senate who will be considering if it makes it through the Education Committee. I would recommend to go through your local legislators that represent either Durham or Middlefield. So we're not reaching out to specific ones.
Okay.
This is already in progress from our last meeting because they went into session like February 8th.
Okay, but did you submit the request to, where did your request go, I guess? It didn't go to every individual, correct?
We didn't submit a formal request. We engaged with the legislators. They explained this process to us, and based on that, they were willing to introduce what they call a validating act of legislation.
Okay, if you could just define who they is, I can take it from there.
They're local legislators, right?
Just, you want a list of all the Durham and Middlefield representatives and senators? We can put that together, sure.
Oh, no, I
That's
can do
who.
that.
That's who it is. That's what I'm saying.
That's
That's
who.
what I'm saying. Us providing it is not gonna be, is not gonna expedite your process. That's who is probably most interested,
That
but
was your communication medium, though, was
yes.
those representatives?
Yes, we reached out to a number of them,
And
yes.
nobody at the state level?
No, no, and it's not the State Department of Education or any of that. This is the legislative body itself.
Okay.
Is there anyone else? Okay, here, no,
Carl.
somebody else? Oh,
Carl's gonna bring us home.
I know it's late.
I figured you'd be
Waited
getting up there.
patiently.
I won't say everything I had on my mind, just gonna deal with one particular thing. Well, there's gonna be two things. These meetings, I'm talking about communication with the community and what have you, we need Zoom capability for these meetings so that the public can participate in them, just like everybody else here. That's what I'll say for that. The other thing is, we're talking about space. We have space at Strong, we have space here. If it's approached with the right attitude, with a can-do attitude, no, we can't do it, it won't work, we can't do this. Well, we can consolidate, it has worked in other communities. If you do it with the right attitude and the can-do attitude, a lot of this space can be used, classes can be moved up and utilized. And you talk about this reimagining RSD13, well, that's my reimagining, to use all the space that we have very efficiently and not create more space that's gonna add more money to the budget. Thank you.
Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.